Warrior Lore. Chapter 39-25. Xian Kong listened to Xiao Hua's words and nodded slightly. After all, alchemy wasn't the North Sea Dragon Palace's strong point. Most of the pills circulating around the North Sea were First Revolution soul-nourishing pills, which were refined using the relics of First Revolution Buddhas. The Second Revolution soul-nourishing pills they just bid on were refined using the relics of Second Revolution Buddhas. Of course, not only were the quality of the First Revolution and Second Revolution completely different, but the same Second Revolution was also related to the cultivation level of the Buddhas during each reincarnation. The Second Revolution's soul-nourishing pills that the North Sea Dragon Palace bid on definitely wouldn't be particularly good. As for the Third Revolution's soul-nourishing pills, it wasn't that the North Sea Dragon Palace didn't have them, but they were very few in number. This was because the Buddhas who could cultivate to the Third Revolution were all very powerful. How could they casually let others take away their relics? Moreover, even if the North Sea Dragon Palace obtained the relics of the Buddhas of the Third Revolution Buddhas, the negative karma within was far from something that the monster race could refine. Therefore, there was no need to mention the Fourth Revolution soul-nourishing pills. That was purely a legendary item. Xiao Hua suddenly said that he had a batch of pills comparable to the Fourth Revolution soul-nourishing pills, and not just one. How could Xian Kong not be shocked? Fellow immortals. Xian Kong made up his mind and said, "These Taoist nascent soul cultivators will stop bidding for the time being." Before Xian Kong could finish speaking, the human cultivator who bid on Xiao Hua was unhappy and sneered. "Xian Kong, is this how the North Sea Dragon Palace does things? Didn't you agree to use sea crystals to bid? How could someone take out a jade bottle and force you to change the rules?" Xian Kong frowned slightly. Although he was unhappy, he still smiled and said, "This old man also said before that this old man will make the rules of this auction. Moreover, there are many unexpected things in this auction. Fellow immortal, this is nothing. If fellow immortal feels that it's inappropriate, you can go to Profit Trading Company and start picking Tower to bid. They are all humans, so they should know what humans are thinking." The man hesitated for a moment and nodded. "All right, this old man can only follow the host's wishes. However, this old man wants to see what price these nascent soul cultivators will bid for." Fellow immortal, just wait and see. Xian Kong didn't waste his breath and said loudly, "Fellow immortals, the bidding for this batch of nascent souls can be delayed for a moment. We'll bid after I confirm something." All right. The group of demon race beings were also elated. After all, there was a good show to watch. Thus, they didn't mind if things got out of hand. Xiao Hua laughed bitterly. Xian Kong obviously intends to check the authenticity of this soul-nurturing pill, and he even intends to check the effects of the soul-nurturing pill. But Xian Kong didn't discuss it with me at all, and the overbearingness of the Yazi auction square is obvious from this. However, thinking about how Yazi wanted to check the effects of this soul-nurturing pill, Xiao Hua felt anxious in his heart. After all, he didn't know what the Four Revolution soul-nurturing pill looked like. Xian Kong called the shell girl over and passed the jade bottle to her. Then, he ordered the shrimp soldiers and crab generals to leave. After that, the auction hall changed again. Huge images of ships flashed in the auction hall. Xiao Hua understood that Yazi Auction Square had begun to sell ships. The sea race naturally didn't need ships, but the demon race of Thousand Demons Sacred Realm and the human race of Hidden Immortal Continent couldn't do without ships if they wanted to travel to the North Sea. Just like in Hidden Immortal Continent, although cultivators could fly, flying boats, flying carriages, and flying demon beasts were equally important. Just like the Mahist clan and Gongshu clan, the ships built by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas were also the best among all the ships. In particular, the ships built by the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas had the mark of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Ordinary sea beasts didn't dare to make things too difficult for them when they galloped in the sea. Moreover, the patrolling soldiers of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas also had some preferential treatment. Therefore, many human race beings and demon race beings were willing to spend a lot of money to bid for the ships of the Dragon Palace of the Four Seas. Xian Kong pushed the images of the ships in front of him one by one and began to bid. The price of this ship was not the slightest bit cheaper than the previous demon core. However, looking at the crowd of demon race beings rushing like ducks, Xiao Hua's heart was moved, and he opened his mouth to bid. Sure enough, as Xiaohua expected, once he opened his mouth, the immortal emissary who was suspected to be from the immortal palace immediately bid. Every time he bid, his price would always be higher than Xiaohua's. Damn it! Xiaohua cursed in his heart. This was clearly a troublemaker. Moreover, this immortal emissary had countless primordial stones in his pouch. If he wanted to bid for something in the future, it would be even more difficult. However, Xiaohua was not inexperienced in facing this kind of trouble. He slowly increased the price, bit by bit. In the end, he actually increased the price of the ship to a level that even the demon race beings were shocked. All the demon race beings shut their mouths, waiting to see how the two would end this. This old man bid 6,300,000 sea crystals for this ship. Xiaohua said with a smile, "If this immortal friend really wants it, then add a bit more. This old man won't lower himself to the same level as others. Don't you even know the basic etiquette of Confucian cultivators? You're the one who doesn't know etiquette." That person was obviously so angry that he jumped up and shouted, "I bid 6,310,000 sea crystals." This old man means what he says. A gentleman doesn't take what others like. This ship is yours. Xiaohua very indifferently flicked his sleeves and replied casually, You. That person obviously didn't expect Xiaohua to really retreat. He shouted a few times helplessly. However, when the demon race beings saw the internal strife of the human race beings, they all cheered and watched the show. Xian Kong also laughed in the distance. After all, with such an episode happening, the atmosphere of the entire auction house became even better. Xiaohua didn't bid for the following ships. The demon race beings and the human race beings already understood that Xiaohua didn't plan to bid for the ship. After bidding for the ship, it was the materials to build the ship. Xiaohua heard that the iron palm wood was among them. However, what surprised Xiaohua was that in addition to the iron palm wood, many of the materials to build the ship could be used to build the thunderboat. Xiaohua almost didn't even think about it and started bidding. As soon as Xiaohua opened his mouth, Xian Kong laughed. Other demon race beings might not care, but Xian Kong knew that Xiaohua had already bid for a cosmos ring containing refining materials. The materials inside that cosmos ring were completely different from the materials used to build the ship. Since Xiaohua liked the previous materials, he might not care about the current ones. Now that Xiaohua started bidding again, it was obvious that he wanted to provoke the other human race being. Sure enough, following the laughter of the demon race beings, the human race cultivator also started to take it seriously. Even when the two were bidding, a few demon race beings also took the opportunity to add a few words, as if they were joining in the fun. After a few rounds of bidding, Xiaohua seemed to have some misgivings. After thinking for a bit, he said, "Fellow immortal, please. Just like before, this old man has to tell you that this is the last time this old man will bid. If you like it, you can increase the price. This old man is a gentleman and will only do things that help others achieve their goals." Xiaohua's words made the human race cultivator hesitate. He had just been cheated by Xiaohua. This time, he originally wanted to make a comeback, but the price of the sea crystals clearly wasn't enough to satisfy him. If Xiaohua wanted to bid for these materials, he shouldn't have stopped at this time. However, if Xiaohua didn't want to bid for these materials, Xiaohua shouldn't have said anything. The human race cultivator thought for a moment and raised his hand to bid again. However, just as he opened his mouth, he was suddenly startled. At this crucial moment, the human race cultivator suddenly remembered the first thing Xiaohua bid for. Like Xian Kong, the human race cultivator also thought of the cosmos ring that Xiaohua bid for. However, his thoughts were different from Xian Kong's. It seems that this guy wants to build a ship? In other words, the ship he bid for just now wasn't necessarily fake. It's just that I obstructed him and he didn't succeed. Perhaps he wants to build a ship to go out to sea, or perhaps he wants to sell it. How can this ship be built with the strength of a single person? It's hard for me to find this guy's origin, but if it's someone who can build a ship, there really aren't many in the hidden immortal continent. As long as he really wants to bid for the materials of the ship, I will naturally know his origin. Even if he doesn't want to build a ship to go out to sea, but wants to sell it, who can build a ship that can compare with the dragon palace of the four seas? What's the value of the ship he builds? After he finished thinking, The human race cultivator smiled and said, "Since it's like this, a gentleman doesn't snatch what others like. I'll give this thing to fellow immortal." Seeing the human race cultivator raise his hand, Xiao Hua's heart thumped. He cursed inwardly. However, after hearing the human race cultivator's words, Xiao Hua was very happy. However, he pretended to jump up and shouted, "What? You really don't want to bid? You won't regret it?" Ha ha ha. All the demon race cultivators laughed loudly. It was all because Xiao Hua tried to steal a chicken but ended up losing the rice used to lure it. He was teased by another human. Only the human race cultivator sneered and said, "I've already been fooled once. How can I be fooled again?" "All right." Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He said helplessly, These materials, I want them." Xian Kong sent the materials over with a smile. Xiao Hua bitterly took the corresponding origin stones and placed them on the water pillar. He sat down on the chair somewhat dejectedly. Others naturally couldn't see Xiao Hua's appearance, but they could still hear Xiao Hua's voice. That voice of regret was also very obvious. "Humph, keep pretending." The human race cultivator sneered. After a few more rounds of bidding, Xiao Hua also opened his mouth. He didn't relax, and the human race cultivator followed suit. However, Xiao Hua didn't bid too much, and the human race cultivator also stopped when they were ahead. The two of them seemed to have a tacit understanding. They only made use of the gaps in the demon race's bidding, and neither of them revealed any flaws. After bidding for the materials, Xian Kong clapped his hands, and all the lights and shadows disappeared. Then, dozens of beautiful women dressed in light muslin swam out from the walls. These beauties all had the body of a human and the tail of a fish. Their pure white breasts were covered by palm-sized shells. That touch of darkness was reflected in the pure white curves, and it really attracted the gazes of countless male demon race cultivators. "Thank you for your support, fellow immortals." A cunning light appeared in Xian Kong's eyes. He chuckled and said, "Right now, we're bidding for the magic treasures used by Taoist cultivators, the imperial artifacts used by Confucian cultivators, the Buddhist artifacts used by arhats of the Buddhist sects, and the demonic artifacts used by demon experts. Ladies and gentlemen, please take a look at the quality of these magic tools first. After that, this old man will begin to bid for them one by one." -13. Chapter 39:26. In just a moment, the price of the samsara drum had reached 5.7 million, which was similar to the price of the Buddhist treasure from before. At this time, the demon race was already exhausted. Only 2 or 3 scattered bids could be heard from above. 6 million. Xiao Hua suddenly opened his mouth. All the demon race's spirits were shaken, and they almost reflexively looked in another direction. 1 million. This time, that person learned his lesson. He no longer increased the price by 1 million, but only by 100,000. When these two humans opened their mouths, the other demon race knew that they had no chance, so they simply began to watch the show. 2 million. Xiao Hua casually said. 3 million. 4 million. 5 million. The two people increased the price bit by bit. It was somewhat different from before. As that person increased the price, he muttered in his heart. He couldn't figure out whether Xiao Hua wanted this Buddhist treasure or was provoking him again. 4 million. Xiao Hua shouted without hesitation. Could it be that this guy is a Buddhist monk? This seems impossible. That person looked at Xiao Hua's unclear face and guessed with his head lowered. However, Xian Kong didn't miss the opportunity to shout. 4 million. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? 8 million. That person hurriedly said. However, just as he opened his mouth, he regretted it. This time, he increased the price a bit too much. He was afraid that he would be tricked by Xiao Hua again. Sure enough, Xiao Hua smacked his lips again. This soft sound passed into that person's ears. That person's heart slightly trembled, and he felt somewhat cold. He felt that he had been tricked again. Since we're here, it's time for us to decide the winner. Fellow immortal, this old man bids 1 million. If you increase the price again, this Buddhist treasure will be yours. Xiao Hua said as usual, this old man has always been the one to help others achieve their goal. Good. That person immediately relaxed and shouted. Just as he was about to give up, he was suddenly shocked. He narrowed his eyes and looked at Xiao Hua. He hurriedly said, "Good. Then this old man bids 9 million. If you want to help others achieve their goal, then give up." Boom. The crowd of demon race once again exploded. Motherfucker, is this guy crazy? How many times have you been fooled? Why are you still being fooled? This guy isn't sick. He's just brainless. This bastard isn't brainless. His brain has been damaged by his anger. You're wrong. This fellow's brain isn't damaged. He was drugged by old Xian. With old Xian's looks, how could he drug him? I heard humans have different hobbies. Maybe he likes old tortoise? All kinds of discussions could be heard. Although that person's face couldn't be seen clearly, a pair of blood-red eyes were staring straight at Xiao Hua, like a gambler who had lost a bet. Just when the group of demons thought that Xiao Hua would not bid anymore, Xiao Hua actually opened his mouth, sigh, as the saying goes, once and twice, but not thrice. This old man has deceived fellow immortal twice before, causing fellow immortal to take out so many sea crystals for nothing. This old man is truly apologetic. There is a saying in the ancient times, there is nothing greater than acknowledging one's mistakes and correcting them. This time, this old man will not deceive you again. 10 million sea crystals. PFFF. When Xiao Hua's words fell into that person's ears, that person almost spat out blood. Xiao Hua had boasted many times that he was a person who helped others achieve their goals, but it turned out that those things were not what he wanted. Now that he saw what he wanted, he began to go back on his words. Moreover, he was so blatantly and righteously remorseful. How could that person not be angered to death? Most of the demons couldn't react to the human's words. They still stared blankly at Xiao Hua, not understanding the meaning of Xiao Hua's words. However, some of the demons had already woken up, especially Xin Kong. He laughed out loud, but then he realized that it was inappropriate and hurriedly said, "This fellow immortal has bid 10 million sea crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? 11 million. That person clenched his teeth and shouted. The bidding finally returned to its original trajectory. 11,100,000. Fellow immortal, if you raise it again, this old man won't play with you anymore. 12 million. That person didn't care about Xiao Hua's threat and said again, "Fellow immortal, can't you just bid properly?" Xiao Hua stood up and said, 12,100,000. If you raise it again, this old man really won't play. 13 million. That person seemed to have thrown caution to the wind. Xiao Hua didn't say anything. The entire auction house was dead silent. Even the mermaids were staring at Xiao Hua with wide eyes. Xin Kong didn't urge him and quietly waited for Xiao Hua to speak. After a while, Xiao Hua opened his mouth and said, "Fellow immortal, this Buddhist treasure went from 4 million to 13 million. You made this old man spend too many sea crystals. This old man swears to Namo Maitreya Buddha that this will be the last time this old man bids. If fellow immortal raises the price again, this old man will definitely help you achieve your goal. 13,100,000. Good. The crowd of monsters understood and cheered loudly. There were even some monsters who didn't mind blowing things up and shouted, "Raise the price, help you achieve your goal, help you achieve your goal." That person's face was as still as water. Naturally, he couldn't tell the true meaning of Xiao Hua's oath to Namo Maitreya Buddha, but he could tell that Xiao Hua was forced into a dead end. Moreover, when bidding for the nascent soul, Xiao Hua had replaced the sea crystals with a jade bottle in advance, which let him know that 13 million sea crystals was really Xiao Hua's limit. It would be unwise for him to increase the price any further. Therefore, that person smiled and said, "Since fellow immortal has the virtue of helping others achieve their goal, why can't this one follow suit? This item belongs to fellow immortal." AI, fellow immortal Xian. Xiao Hua complained, "This time, your North Sea Dragon Palace really made a fortune. You let me win, you let me win. This is all thanks to fellow immortal's support." Xin Kong couldn't stop smiling. Even he didn't expect that today's auction would be so exciting. Moreover, this was under the condition that the group of nascent soul cultivators didn't win the bid. However, this one has a presumptuous request. Xiao Hua said again, Can this one bid for the nascent soul? Fellow immortal, I'm sorry. Shin Kong immediately understood Xiao Hua's meaning and immediately interrupted him. Fellow immortal could have mentioned it before the auction ended. But now that the auction has ended, forgive this old man for not being able to change his mind. Fellow immortal, please take out enough. Origin stones. All right. Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment, but still gave enough origin stones to the mermaid. However, when he took the Buddhist treasure, the reincarnation drum, the corners of his mouth curled up into a sneer. When the mermaid brought this Buddhist treasure over, he had already released a strand of Buddhist awareness to investigate it. This thing's appearance was that of a Buddhist treasure with Buddhist light, but in fact, it wasn't a Buddhist treasure at all. Under his heaven's eye, Xiao Hua discovered that there were traces of green patterns inside the Buddhist treasure. When he used his soul awareness to investigate, Xiao Hua was shocked to discover that this was a strange soul tool. It was also because of this soul tool that the North Sea Dragon Palace treated it as a Buddhist treasure. 13 million sea crystals in exchange for a soul tool. In Xiao Hua's eyes, it was absolutely worth it. Next was the main event of the auction, the demonic treasure. Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't get involved with these monsters. Today, the monster race was definitely Xiao Hua's friendly neighbor. If it weren't for these monsters' clamor and instigation, if there weren't these monsters shouting from the side, the person bidding with Xiao Hua might not have fallen into Xiao Hua's trap again and again. Sometimes, it wasn't that there weren't any smart people in this world, but that no one was stupid. The so-called times create bears was perhaps the same as today's situation. Xiao Hua seemed to be meditating with his eyes closed. His mind had already entered the space. After all, this was an item exchanged for tens of millions of top-grade origin stones. How could Xiao Hua not care? In particular, this soul tool was the item that Xiao Hua had spent the most money on in history. Looking at Xiao Hua's previous auction history, when he obtained a good item, he had never been so serious about bidding like today. If Xiao Hua really made a mistake, Xiao Hua would want to cry. Xiao Hua took out the soul tool. It was very similar to the one used by the Buddhist sect's law protector, Heavenly King in the blood pool of gods and demons. However, this will lacked the same thin killing weapon. On the wheel, there was a pattern of 6 axes engraved on it. Xiao Hua was very familiar with this pattern. He saw that the innermost axes of the wheel were engraved with the sun and moon revolving around the summit of Mount Meru. On the top of the axes, there was a palace. It was clean, bright, and magnificent. In the Buddhist light, there was a celestial sitting around the mountain. Their faces were filled with peace and benevolence. This was one of the Buddhist sect's 6 axes, the heavenly Tao. Next to the heavenly Tao's axes were engraved with 4 people wearing crowns and robes. They were standing while holding an object. Under the feet of these 4 people, there were mountains, rivers, and all kinds of people clearly visible. This was one of the Buddhist sect's 6 axes, the Tao of Heaven. Next to the Tao of Heaven's axes were engraved with a 3-headed, 6-armed figure holding various kinds of weapons. This figure was like a human but not a human, like a god but not a god. Under this figure, there was a monstrous wave of blood, boundless slaughter everywhere. This was one of the Buddhist sect's 6 axes, the Azura Path. Next to the Azura Path's axes were engraved with the pitch-black gate of hell. A horse-faced jailer was about to throw a sinner into a pot of boiling oil. In addition to the horse-faced jailer and the frying pan, there were 18 layers of hell, where all the sufferings gathered. It was the hell path of the Buddhist sect's 6 paths. In the axle of the hell path, there was an engraving of a hungry ghost holding a person and biting the person's head. The person's head was burned by fierce fire and was about to be burned to ashes. It was the hungry ghost path of the Buddhist sect's 6 paths, and in the outermost axle of the wheel, there was an engraving of a lion, an ox, and a horse that were being driven by people and eating each other. Under these eye-catching diagrams, there were many animals either biting, paralyzed, or dying. It was the animal path of the Buddhist sect's 6 paths. Well, it really looks like the Buddhist sect's 6 paths of reincarnation. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with starlight, as if he could see the inside of the wheel. He smiled and said, "Unfortunately, the Buddhist sect's 6 paths of reincarnation is not so simple. The 6 paths should be intertwined with each other and have their own reincarnation. I'm afraid that when the North Sea Dragon Palace saw the appearance of this Buddhist artifact, they would understand that the Buddhist artifact's 6 paths of reincarnation diagram is known but not the reason. It's impossible for it to be contaminated with the Bodhi Buddha's light of Mavirakana world venerable who became a Buddha. -13. Chapter 39:27. Xiaohua rotated the wheel with his finger. As the wheel rotated, a faint Buddhist light was emitted from it. At the same time, a faint sound of chanting could be heard. It was even more Buddhist than an ordinary Buddhist instrument. Xiaohua looked at the Buddhist instrument and secretly laughed. I have already succeeded in soul cultivation, but I don't have any suitable soul instrument or soul technique to use. If these tens of millions of top-grade primordial stones can be exchanged for a soul instrument that can kill people, that would be great. However, since it's a soul instrument, it should still be wielded by a soul cultivator friend. After saying that, Xiaohua's figure flashed, and he was already outside the mysterious cloud. At this time, the mysterious cloud was different from the previous one. Although the previous mysterious cloud had begun to condense and the cloud threads began to stabilize, in the end, it didn't take shape. Last time, under the attack of the Hell Judge's soul chain, it even showed signs of collapse. But at this time, the mysterious cloud could no longer be called a cloud. The whole cloud had completely condensed, and the whole body was sparkling and translucent. However, within this sparkling and translucent cloud, there were layers of cloud-shaped crystals in a scattered state. The heavenly patterns and earth deeds that were previously engraved outside the mysterious cloud had deeply integrated into the crystal. Moreover, where Xiaohua's gaze fell on the crystal of the mysterious cloud, there was a colorful brilliance outside the crystal like a small world. He almost felt like he couldn't take his eyes away from it. The soul cultivation realm is unpredictable. It's just the wizard realm, and the mysterious cloud has such changes. Even I can't see through it. If it's cultivated to the extreme, what will it be like? Xiaohua sighed and stepped on the mysterious cloud. Kacha. A dense layer of 3 corpses in thunder was produced from the surface of the crystal like a violent storm. Xiaohua didn't see how the 3 corpses in thunder moved. When the 3 corpses in thunder fell 3 inches away from Xiaohua, it turned into a circle of whirlpools. In this whirlpool, a cloud-shaped passage was born. Haha, fellow Taoist has come? Please. Soul cultivator Xiaohua's cheerful voice rang out from the passage. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked up at the mysterious crystal cloud, which seemed to contain heavenly might, and the 3 corpses in lightning that had disappeared. In his heart, he knew that this was the mysterious cloud's own defense. It wasn't that it had some sort of divine ability to stop the attack, but rather that it had voluntarily retracted the attack because it shared the same origin as Xiaohua. Xiaohua, quickly come and take a look. Little White Dragon urged from within the passage. Hee, all right. Jade Archive Xiaohua nodded and stepped into the passage. Just like the teleportation passage, Jade Archive Xiaohua appeared amidst the billowing dark clouds. Roar. A dragon's roar could be heard from the sea. The little white dragon's body, which was several thousand feet long, soared into the sky. The dragon's body was covered with blood vessels, and it was no longer in the form of a translucent soul. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at the blue sea and saw that the tens of millions of soul strands had now turned into liquid. These liquid soul strands were filled with the water of the yellow springs, and the entire blue sea was mixed with countless blood-red strands. These strands of blood-red strands looked like fish swimming in the blue waves. Looking at the sky above the soul formation sky, the Sorcerer's Codex was like a bright moon, emitting a dark green luster. Within each strand of light, countless green seal characters flashed. The brilliance of the Sorcerer's Codex illuminated the entire soul formation sky. Layers upon layers of mountains and rivers appeared extremely clearly, and within these drawings, the men plowing and the women weaving also appeared alive. What was special was that after layers upon layers of mountains and rivers were born, layers upon layers of pitch-black hell were born. In the pitch-black darkness, the tragic scenes of the 18 layers of hell flashed one after another. It was the hell of tongue pulling, the hell of scissors, the hell of tree of iron, the hell of mirror of retribution, the fellow Taoist steamer, the hell of bronze pillars, the hell of knife mountain, the hell of ice mountain, the hell of frying pan, the hell of cow pit, the hell of stone pressure, the hell of blood pond, the hell of wrongful death, the hell of dismemberment, the hell of volcano, the hell of stone grinding, or the hell of knife saw. The tragic scenes of the 18 layers of hell were extremely vivid. Greetings, fellow Taoist. Soul cultivator Xiaohua appeared in front of Jade Archive Xiaohua and cupped his hands in salute. Jade Archive Xiaohua withdrew his gaze from the strange scene of the soul formation sky and looked at Soul cultivator Xiaohua. Soul cultivator Xiaohua was no longer several zhang tall, like a god from before. Instead, he had become the same size as Jade Archive Xiaohua. His originally somewhat illusory body had completely solidified. What was special was that the rolling green seal characters in his eyes had already disappeared. Except for the occasional green light that overflowed, his black and white eyes were no different from Jade Archive Xiaohua's. Of course, Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's clothes were still the same, but there was an inexplicable crown on his head. This crown was not clear. It seemed to be square and hexagonal. However, a kind of surging aura that made Jade Archive Xiaohua feel terrified came out of the crown. Congratulations, fellow Taoist, for your great progress in cultivation. Jade Archive Xiaohua raised his hand to return the salute. Hee, congratulations to you too. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua's laughter matched his facial expression very well. He was no different from a real person. Congratulations to Xiaohua for your great progress in cultivation. Little white dragons circled around in the air, soul threads dancing around his body. He instantly transformed into a human figure identical to Xiaohua and cupped his hands with a smile. His voice was actually the same as Xiaohua's. Jade Archive Xiaohua didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He said, "Why is Little White so naughty? Why does he have to transform into I?" Little White stroked his chin and looked at Xiaohua thoughtfully. He smiled and said, "There's no other reason. I like it." Jade Archive Xiaohua almost fell over. He could only put his hand to his forehead and say, "Whatever." "Xiaohua, how's the matter of my body molding coming along? I remember you saying that you had some ideas last time." Little White hurriedly asked before Jade Archive Xiaohua could say anything. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, "I did have some ideas, but for some reason, I couldn't make it in time for the appointment with Ao Zhantian. I'm afraid I won't be able to make it this time. I'll contact Jiang Che of the Heavenly Paradise River in the future." It's fine. Xiao Bai, on the other hand, understood Xiaohua's hard work and smiled. "I got some good fortune in your soul formation. Don't be too anxious. Don't you Tao cultivators talk about fate? Perhaps I won't have the chance to condense my body. And it's good that you have this thought." Xiaohua nodded. According to Jiang Che, if you want to form a dragon body, you have to use the dragon cleansing pool of the Dragon Island. And the Dragon Island? We have no relationship with the Dragon Island at all. How can they let us use it so casually? So we can only act according to circumstances. I naturally understand the difficulty of forming a body. To be honest, with my current memories, forming a body is extremely difficult even in the 10,000 demon realm. So you don't have to worry. If I can't form a body, I'll stay here for the rest of my life." Little White comforted Jade Archive Xiaohua. Jade Archive Xiaohua was speechless. Little White Dragon's soul could stay in his mysterious cloud for the rest of his life. He didn't care, but what about him? How could he let him stay here forever? I wonder why fellow Taoist came here today? Soul Cultivator Xiaohua covered his mouth and asked with a smile. Jade Archive Xiaohua ignored Little White and said to Soul Cultivator Xiaohua with a smile, "I came to find fellow Taoist today because I have a happy occasion." Oh, Soul Cultivator Xiaohua raised his eyebrows and said in surprise, "I just had an earth-shaking change here, and now there's a happy occasion. It's really a double blessing." Haha. Seeing that Soul Cultivator Xiaohua could speak so eloquently, Jade Archive Xiaohua was quite happy. He waved his hand and took out the reincarnation drum from his Taoist robe. "This is a soul tool. Take a look. Can it be compared with the soul falling lamp in the back earth village of Meng Mountain?" And Soul cultivator Xiao Hua took the reincarnation drum, looked it up and down, and said with a smile, "This soul tool is really exquisite. If fellow Taoist wasn't so familiar with the Buddhist scriptures, I'm afraid you would have mistaken it for a Buddhist tool." After saying that, soul cultivator Xiao Hua opened his mouth and several green seal characters flew out. These green seal characters caused a strange sound and then fell in one place, forming an even bigger green seal character. The space around this green seal character was distorted abnormally, and a soul-shaking sound was heard as the green seal character fell on the soul tool. Swoosh! Like a wind blowing on dust, the surface of the soul tool was shaved off layer by layer. The 6 paths of reincarnation quickly shrank, and the Buddhist light and the sound of chanting turned into specks of light and disappeared in the air. In front of Xiao Hua and Jade Archive Xiao Hua, a 3-foot-long writing brush appeared in the air. This. Jade Archive Xiao Hua's eyes fell on the shaft of the brush. This shaft was as thick as a fist and had the same 6 paths engraved on it. However, this 6 paths of reincarnation diagram was very strange and different from the previous one. The lines of the diagram were so thin that they were almost invisible to the naked eye. Furthermore, these diagrams were simple and cold to the extreme. Even Jade Archive Xiao Hua felt a chill run down his spine when he looked at them. However, there was something different about this brush shaft. The tip of the brush was a bright green color that was so dazzling that it looked like a budding flower. Wait! Jade Archive Xiao Hua suddenly thought of something and waved his hand, causing the brush to land in his hand. Fellow Taoist soul cultivator, please come with me. However, Xiao Hua had just moved the Jade Archive when he stopped and laughed bitterly. I forgot that fellow immortal Confucian cultivator is in closed-door cultivation right now. Oh? Why is fellow Taoist looking for fellow Taoist Confucian? Soul cultivator Xiao Hua asked curiously. This is clearly a soul tool. Haha, fellow Taoist soul cultivator. Jade Archive Xiao Hua rubbed his nose and smiled. Have you ever heard fellow Taoist Confucian talk about the story of painting sage Maoyang? Of course I have. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua laughed. That guy is always bored when he's not cultivating. He would always tell me about Confucian classics and anecdotes. Of course I have heard about the story of magic brush Maoyang. At this point, soul cultivator Xiao Hua suddenly understood. He looked at the brush in Jade Archive Xiao Hua's hand and asked curiously, could this be the magic brush Maoyang's magic brush? How is this possible? -13. Chapter 39:28. That's right. If I guessed correctly, this is the brush used by the divine brush Maoyang. Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded thoughtfully. Brush? Soul cultivator Xiao Hua frowned slightly. If this brush was used by the painting Saint Maoyang, it should be an imperial item. The problem is, the reason why the painting Sage Maoyang is known as the divine brush is because the paintings he makes can become real, alive. Can an imperial item have such an effect? Jade Archive Xiao Hua explained. Also, fellow Taoist must have heard of the story of the finishing touch, right? Of course, it's the story of Zhang Xingyao painting 4 dragons on the wall of the Annal Temple in Jinling. But he didn't add the finishing touch. Every day, touch it and it will fly away. People thought it was absurd, so they insisted on adding the finishing touch. In a flash, thunder and lightning broke the wall, and the 2 dragons soared into the sky on clouds. The 2 dragons that didn't add the finishing touch were all there. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua said. Jade Archive Xiao Hua nodded. That's right. Zhang Xinjiao's dragon painting brush was ordinary, but the finishing touch was the brush. So Maoyang and Zhang Xinjiao should also know about soul cultivation. Soul cultivator Xiao Hua realized something. Jade Archive Xiao Hua looked at the brush in his hand and smiled bitterly. If I guessed correctly, Xiaoyu continent is originally together with the other 3 continents. Since Xiaoyu continent has millions of soul cultivators in Ming Mountain, it's not strange that the other 3 continents also know about soul cultivation. But, speaking up to here, Jade Archive Xiao Hua was extremely distressed. But I spent tens of millions of supreme-grade vitality stones to buy a soul tool that can kill people. But for no reason, he bought a brush that can add the finishing touch. What's the use of that? Wouldn't I lose a lot of money? Fellow Taoist, You're wrong. Heaven and earth have spirits. Life is the right path, but life is limited. That is death. Therefore, the Tao of life and death is the head of the 3,000 Das. In this world, there must be life before death. Death is something cultivators can control, but life is controlled by the great Tao. Now that we have the chance to control the origin of life, this is truly a joyous occasion. Fellow Taoist, why are you so dejected that you have one less way to die? Isn't this buying the casket and returning the pearl? Isn't this neglecting the essentials? Soul Cultivator Xiaohua smiled and raised his hand. Jade Archive Xiaohua looked at Soul Cultivator Xiaohua and placed the subbrush in his hand. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua waved the subbrush and strange sounds were heard. Strands of dark green light flashed from the subbrush, and at the same time, vivid images of birds and beasts were born under the subbrush. However, as soon as these images appeared, they disappeared. They didn't become real creatures as Jade Archive Xiaohua had expected. Sigh. The Jade Archive Xiaohua sighed. Who in this world would still think about these things? Which one of them didn't want to improve their cultivation so that they could have another way to kill? Who would still think about the source of the great Tao? The Confucian cultivators had been passed down for billions of years, but now they had even lost the true essence of their cultivation. I just want to have one more life-saving method. It's not wrong. It doesn't matter if it's wrong or right. Left and right, he had already obtained them. Fellow Taoist, you don't need to think too much. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua raised the subbrush in his hand and smiled. The underworld magistrate has a soul-hooking brush, and I have a subbrush in my hand. One dies and one lives. It's really interesting. Oh, right, fellow Taoist, you trapped the underworld magistrate's clone in the inside of space. Did you get anything? Hee. Jade Archive Xiaohua smiled and said, the mystery of the underworld is unspeakable. If one day we have a trip to the underworld, fellow Taoist subbrush will still have to contribute. Fellow Taoist, cultivate well. Good. Soul Cultivator Xiaohua opened his mouth and spat out a mouthful of green light. The subbrush returned to his body and nodded. I'm afraid that only a late-stage wizard can activate the subbrush. I will do my best. Good. Fellow Taoist, thank you for your hard work. Goodbye. Jade Archive Xiaohua cupped his hands towards Soul Cultivator Xiaohua, then looked at the little white dragon and left. Xiaohua's mind left the space. The Yazi auction house's demonic weapon auction had already ended. Now, they were bidding for some cultivation methods of Confucian cultivators, Taoist sects, Buddhist sects, and demonic beasts. The demonic beast cultivation mainly depended on inheritance. The cultivation methods recorded were all low-level, suitable for those demonic beasts who didn't get the inheritance to shed their hair and open their wisdom. Therefore, there were many demonic beasts bidding around Xiaohua. The human race didn't have as many cultivation methods as the demonic beasts, but there were all kinds of cultivation methods from low level to high level. Moreover, many of them were relatively rare. Therefore, when Xiaohua opened his eyes, many human cultivators had already begun to bid. Xiaohua listened for a while. Although these cultivation methods were good, they were useless to him. He thought a little and casually bid for a few cultivation methods. The strange thing was, even if the demonic beasts were very cooperative and looked at the human cultivator who had been singing a show with Xiaohua, that human cultivator didn't say anything. Xiaohua also didn't waste any effort and took a few cultivation methods of Confucian cultivators, including the high-level water escape technique of Confucian cultivators. After probing, Xiaohua's heart was also relieved. Just now, tens of millions of top-grade primordial stones let that human cultivator vent his anger. Presumably, the future bidding wouldn't be particularly difficult, so Xiaohua put his attention on the following Taoist cultivation methods. Sure enough, in the following Taoist cultivation methods, not only were there cultivation methods for yuanying and out-of-body cultivators, but there were also some secret techniques and magical abilities. After these, there was actually a rare gold escape technique and a high-level cultivation method. After Xiaohua pretended to bid for a secret technique, he quietly waited for the gold escape technique. What Xiaohua thought was that this gold escape technique actually didn't have anyone bidding for it. Helpless, Xiaohua opened his mouth. As soon as Xiaohua opened his mouth, The human cultivator on the opposite side spoke again, as if he was sure that Xiao Hua would bid for this gold escape technique. Xiao Hua had no choice but to pinch his nose and be led away by the human cultivator. Fortunately, the gold escape technique's starting price wasn't high, and the human cultivator seemed to be warning him more. Therefore, although this gold escape technique cost Xiao Hua some primordial stones, it was still in Xiao Hua's pocket. It's really better to squash enmity than keep it alive. When Xiao Hua handed over the gold and water escape techniques to the green-robed Xiao Hua, he sighed in his heart. Now, this Xiao has gathered all 5 elements escape techniques, and the lightning escape technique has also reached the high level. These are useful for this Xiao's light escape technique. However, the wind escape technique given by the 10,000 Demon Realms Empress is still at the elementary level. The wind escape technique is as rare as the gold escape technique, and the wind escape technique should exist in the demonic beasts. Let's see if I can get it in today's auction. Unfortunately, Xiao Hua's good luck came to an end today. Even after all the cultivation techniques were sold out, there was still no wind escape technique to be seen. Okay, now that the cultivation technique has been sold, it's time to bid for formations, demonic formations, primordial formations, Buddhist formations, and sea maps. Xian Kong raised the walking stick in his hand, and a gust of wind swept through the entire auction hall. Within the gust of wind, various array diagrams appeared before everyone's eyes. They were either surging waves or submerged reefs on the surface of the sea. Xian Kong pointed at the dozen sea maps and said, "These are the sea maps of the Forbidden Seas under the jurisdiction of my North Sea Dragon Palace. They aren't too detailed, but only my North Sea Dragon Palace has the ability to draw the sea maps of these Forbidden Seas. Especially the 4 Forbidden Seas, Umo Forbidden Sea, Chunche Forbidden Sea, Fini Forbidden Sea, and Jingxing Forbidden Sea. For many years, there hasn't been any sea maps. Now, fellow immortals are lucky. My North Sea Patrol Envoy has the opportunity to enter one of these Forbidden Seas and draw the sea maps. If any fellow immortals are interested, you can bid. The sea maps of the 4 Forbidden Seas are 800,000 sea crystals each, and the other sea maps are 300,000 sea crystals each." Old Xian, a demonic beast, laughed. "What do we need these sea maps for? If you take out the sea map of your North Sea Dragon Palace, this old man is willing to exchange it for 10 million sea crystals." Hee hee. Xian Kong also laughed. "My North Sea Dragon Palace's sea map can be exchanged for 10 million sea crystals? Fellow immortal, you're joking too much. This sea map, I'll pay 300,000 sea crystals." Since the Yazzie auction house was willing to take out sea maps, naturally there would be demonic beasts who needed them. As soon as Xian Kong's sea map appeared, there were demonic beasts bidding for it. Moreover, there seemed to be quite a number of demonic beasts bidding for it. After the normal sea maps were auctioned, it was time for the sea maps of the 4 Forbidden Seas. Umo Forbidden Sea, Fini Forbidden Sea, and Jingxing Forbidden Sea were all auctioned by demonic beasts. However, no one was interested in the sea map of the Chunche Forbidden Sea. All right, fellow immortal Xian. The Chunche Forbidden Sea is filled with ghostly whales and howls all year round. Whenever a ship or a member of the sea accidentally passes by, it will trigger a lightning bolt. If they're lucky, even if their ship is destroyed and they're heavily injured, they can still appear from other places. If they're unlucky, they won't even be able to find a piece of their wreckage. Who would go there? Who knows if your sea map of the Chunche Forbidden Sea is real or fake? Xian Kong laughed. Of course, this sea map of the Chunche Forbidden Sea is real. However, there's no detailed information on it. It's just a map drawn by the North Sea Dragon Palace's patrol envoy recently. How about this? This sea map costs 500,000 sea crystals. However, even if it was 500,000 sea crystals, none of the demonic beasts would waste it. This old man bids 500,000 sea crystals. Xiao Hua suddenly opened his mouth, causing the crowd of demonic beasts to laugh. They couldn't help but look at the person opposite Xiao Hua. Although that person's lungs were about to explode from anger, he couldn't say anything. He could only squint his eyes as he looked at the sea map and ponder over Xiao Hua's intentions. It seems like this guy is preparing to bid for the formation map. He's trying to tempt me into making a move, and then he'll withdraw as soon as I open my mouth. Damn it, but what if he really wants this sea map? After thinking about it for a while, facing the gazes of countless demonic beasts, that person clenched his teeth and said, 510,000 sea crystals. All right. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and said, this old man bids 600,000 sea crystals. If you raise the price again, then this old man will fulfill your wish. Haha. The crowd of demonic beasts laughed as usual, waiting for Xiao Hua to say, there's only one more time. There's no third or fourth time. Unfortunately, faced with Xiao Hua's repeated bluffs, that person really couldn't figure out what Xiao Hua was trying to do. Thinking about how he had forced Xiao Hua to spend a lot of source stones to bid for the metal evasion technique, that person could already feel the aura of Xiao Hua's scheme. Thus, that person laughed and said, this old man will fulfill your wish. There's no need for you to think too highly of yourself. Haha. Xiao Hua laughed and said, then this old man thanks fellow immortal. This sea map is something this old man must obtain. After saying that, Xiao Hua immediately took out some source stones and handed it over to Shen Kong. Unfortunately, no matter how happy Xiao Hua was, in the eyes of that person, Xiao Hua was just putting on an act. He was just trying to act as a cover for bidding for the formation map in the future. A good activity like a pie falling from the sky. Cool phones are waiting for you. Click on the Chinese network's official account, WeChat friend, add official account, type Dread, and participate immediately. Everyone has a prize. Immediately follow Dread's official account on WeChat. -13. Chapter 39-29. Sure enough, after several rounds of bidding, it was the turn of a formation diagram called the 13 Buddhist Clouds Formation. The Buddhist formations of the Buddhist sect were naturally not as good as the relics of the Buddhist sect. The monster race was not interested in it, and there were not many humans who understood formations, so the previous bidding was relatively quiet. When it came to this formation diagram, no one bid, even though Xian Kong's bid was only 200,000 sea crystals. Seeing that Xian Kong was about to change the Buddhist formation to a Buddhist formation, Xiao Hua suddenly smiled and said, fellow immortal Xian, the things in your Yazi auction house today have really opened this old man's eyes. This old man has gained a lot from you. How about this? Since no one is bidding for this Buddhist formation, this scene is too awkward. This old man will join in the fun and bid for this Buddhist formation. Oh, thank you, fellow immortal. Xian Kong was stunned for a moment. Then he smiled and the strange expression in his eyes became even stronger. Xiao Hua's move was really everyone knows what Sima Zhao is thinking. Not to mention the humans. Even the monster race who never used their brains to speak and do things could see Xiao Hua's thoughts. Needless to say, all the monster race naturally looked at Xiao Hua in an instant. Oh, this fellow immortal is starting to get closer to fellow immortal Xian? The corners of that person's mouth rose slightly, and he said indifferently, in that case, this old man can't be left behind. This old man bids 210,000 sea crystals. Fellow immortal, aren't you being too obvious? Xiao Hua muttered unwillingly. This old man bids 300,000, 310,000, 400,000, 410,000, 500,000. As Xiao Hua and that person bid one price after another, the heads of all the monster race and human race in the entire auction field nodded left and right like little chicks. The rhythm was uniform and quite orderly. 510,000, 600, 000, 610,000. Seeing that person being so aggressive, Xiao Hua was also very anxious. His tone was very angry, and his whole body stood up from the chair. The speed of his bidding also increased. 900,000, 910,000, 1 million, 1,010,000. After that person finished announcing the price, all the humans and demons looked at Xiao Hua's figure. Then, as usual, they paused at Xiao Hua's position and turned to look at that person. That person also shouted, 11 million. However, just as everyone and the demons turned to look at Xiao Hua again, they suddenly came to a realization. Xiao Hua wasn't bidding. The crowd of demons and humans came to their senses, and so did the man himself. An extremely bad feeling rose from the bottom of the man's heart. He almost said angrily, You why didn't you bid? Oh, why should this old man bid? Xiao Hua replied casually, this old man can't outbid you, so I can only give you this incomparably precious Buddha array. You, why aren't you? That person was at a loss for words. He almost stuttered as he asked, but he couldn't finish his sentence. Xiao Hua said with a smile, what? Are you still waiting for this old man to say something? In. Without waiting for that person to speak, the nearby demons all nodded, agreeing with Xiao Hua's opinion. Didn't this old man say it already? There can only be 1 and 2 times, but not 3 and 4 times. Xiao Hua said very innocently, this old man has said so many times, how can I say it again? That person almost vomited blood when he heard this, because Xiao Hua had to say, how many millions of sea crystals is this old man going to bid at the end? If you raise the price again, then this old man will have to fulfill your wish. In order to end it, he took it for granted that Xiao Hua would say it this time, so he didn't even consider bidding with Xiao Hua. Of course, Xiao Hua's bidding speed was also extremely fast. Even if he sensed it in his heart, he didn't react. Who would have thought that Xiao Hua would suddenly stop bidding? Not to mention him, even the crowd of demons who were watching the show didn't have any reaction. They even used their gazes to urge him to bid. Ha ha ha. The demons understood, and they all laughed loudly. The atmosphere of the entire Yazi auction house suddenly reached its peak. Unfortunately, this peak wasn't brought to them by bidding. It was purely formed by the invisible battle between the bidders. Xian Kong also couldn't help but cover his mouth and laugh. A Buddhist formation of 200,000 sea crystals was bid for 1,010,000, which was 5 times the previous price. Oh, it should be 1,010,000 for no reason, because Xian Kong could see that Xiao Hua had no intention of bidding for this Buddhist formation. In fact, it was destined that no one would bid for this Buddhist formation. 1,010,000 sea crystals might not be much to that person, but the anger in his chest was really choking. At this time, Xiao Hua opened his mouth again. Fellow immortals, I wonder if you have raised chickens when you were young? We don't have any. Some of the more outspoken demons were puzzled. What's a chicken? 2 of the humans asked. Fellow Taoist, we did eat chicken when we were young, but we've never raised a chicken before. Xiao Hua nodded and said with a very serious expression, when this old man was young, he lived in a village and raised a few chickens at home. This old man was responsible for feeding them grass. When the demons heard Xiao Hua's serious tone, they naturally listened attentively. Every time this old man fed the chickens, he would use chopsticks to knock on the broken bowl, and then sprinkle the grass around the broken bowl. After feeding them a few times, as long as the chickens heard the sound of this old man knocking on the bowl, they would run over. This old man didn't even need to call them. Xiao Hua said, however, once this old man was lazy and didn't gather grass. When it was time to feed the chickens, this old man was afraid of being spanked by my parents, so as long as I knocked on the bowl again, there was no grass around the broken bowl. However, those chickens still ran over. Fellow immortals, what breed of chickens do you think this old man raised at home? The demons were dumbfounded. Xiao Hua's question clearly had nothing to do with this story. They really didn't know how to answer. Several human cultivators also asked curiously, fellow immortal, what breed of chickens do you have? Stupid chicken. Xiao Hua replied resolutely and decisively, and then sat down calmly. Ha 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 ha. Not to mention the others and the demons, even Fu Jiwen, who was beside Xiao Hua, laughed so hard that he held his stomach and said, Master, you old man are really too funny. Is that so? Xiao Hua shrugged. This old man doesn't think so. This old man is just putting some jokes on other people's pain, especially those who like the nascent souls of Taoist cultivators. As he said this, Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and looked at the human cultivators in the distance who didn't seem to be very clear. The demons naturally reacted slowly. After a while, they started laughing. This laughter lasted for the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Xiao Hua's story sounded very ordinary, but if one thought about it carefully, it would definitely be interesting. The more the demons thought about it, the more interesting it became. For a moment, they actually couldn't stop laughing. Xian Kong laughed for a while and sent the Buddhist formation to that person. That person helplessly took out 1,010,000 sea crystals and put the Buddhist formation away. Fellow immortals. Xian Kong coughed a few times. His voice was like thunder, and it finally suppressed the laughter of the demons. The bidding for the Buddhist formation has ended. Next is the demonic formation. Actually, according to the order, the Buddhist formation would be followed by the formation and the origin formation. This Xian Kong was also a clever person. How could he not know how to take advantage of the situation? He hurriedly placed the demonic formation in front of him. Needless to say, the bidding that followed was very intense. It was really rare to see such a scene in an ordinary auction. Not only were the demons bidding loudly, but they were also shouting, "Stupid chicken," loudly. Their satisfaction was self-evident. Xiaohua sat there lazily. What formation? Demonic formation, Buddhist formation, and origin formation. How could they enter his eyes? The innate divine restriction outside his Niwen palace was enough for him to comprehend for a lifetime. He didn't have any reason to spend origin stones on it. The human cultivator who bid against Xiaohua gritted his teeth and looked at Xiaohua, quietly waiting for him to bid again. Unfortunately, while he was waiting, the bidding for the formation had already ended. Fellow immortals. Xian Kong smiled and spoke again. Now, it's time for the final round of the auction. However, before he could finish speaking, a small swordfish suddenly swam over from a corner of the auction house and landed in front of Xian Kong. When Xian Kong saw the swordfish, he raised his head slightly and glanced in Xiaohua's direction. Xiaohua straightened his back. He understood that the swordfish had brought news of his soul-nourishing pill. Sure enough, Xian Kong took the swordfish and held it in his hand for a moment. The swordfish turned into demon runes and landed on the back of his hand. Xian Kong nodded slightly and said with a smile, "Fellow immortals, the nascent soul that was previously put on hold can now be auctioned. However, in view of the confidentiality of this fellow immortals transaction, the Yazi auction house won't announce the specific details. Please understand, fellow immortals." Wait, the demons didn't say anything, but that person stood up and said, "What? Fellow immortal, do you have any objections?" Xian Kong wasn't surprised and asked with a smile. That person said, "No matter what this fellow immortal offers the North Sea Dragon Palace, this old man can also offer it. Moreover, I can offer 10% more to the North Sea Dragon Palace." Boom! The group of demons were elated once more. This human was way too cocky. In fact, some of the demons even laughed out, "Fellow immortal, have you been angered to the point of losing your mind? Why are you so arrogant?" "That's right, fellow immortal. Your words are too arrogant," Xian Kong said disapprovingly. That person took out an item from his bosom and was about to give it to Xian Kong. However, he hesitated slightly and took out a heaven and earth bangle. He put the item into the heaven and earth bangle and smiled as he handed the heaven and earth bangle to Xian Kong. He said, "I'm speaking with this item. I don't know if it's trustworthy." Oh? Xian Kong seemed to be lost in thought as he received the world bracelet, and then he glanced at it before a wave of surprise and solemnity appeared on his face. He thought for a moment before he laughed bitterly and said, "Fellow Taoist, please wait for a moment. I'm unable to make the decision in this matter. A good activity where a pie falls from the sky. A cool phone awaits you. Click on the Chinese website's official account, add a friend on WeChat, add a public account, type Dread, and participate immediately. Everyone has a prize. Follow Dread's official account immediately." -13. Chapter 39:30. Oh! After hearing Xian Kong's words, Xiaohua was naturally even more certain that this person was an immortal emissary from the Immortal Palace. However, the crowd of demons was somewhat surprised. All the demons' heads habitually looked towards that person. Of course, this time they were not urging that person to bid. As he spoke, Xian Kong pointed his hand and a wave appeared out of thin air. Xian Kong placed the heaven and earth bracelet on top of the wave. That wave swirled in the air and disappeared. "My apologies, fellow immortals. Please wait for a moment. There should be a reply soon." As Xian Kong spoke, he simply stopped hosting the auction and stood there waiting. Sure enough, in just the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Another swordfish swam back with the heaven and earth bracelet in its mouth. All the demons were eagerly waiting. They all anxiously watched the swordfish land in Shin Kong's hand and quietly waited for Shin Kong's explanation. Shin Kong took the heaven and earth bracelet. The swordfish also turned into demon runes and disappeared on the back of his hand. Shin Kong did not hesitate to raise his hand to control the wave and send the heaven and earth bracelet back to that person. He said with a smile, "I'm afraid you can't take what this fellow immortal offers. Therefore, my Yazi auction house will only trade with this fellow immortal." How is that possible? That person stood up in surprise and shouted, "How can the hidden immortal continent have something that this old man, can't provide?" Although that person was cautious and did not say the two words immortal palace, from his tone, other than the demons who did not understand, perhaps some humans had already begun to think about it. "That's right. Fellow immortal really can't provide it," Shin Kong said, and then transmitted his voice to Xiaohua. "The soul-nourishing pill provided by fellow immortal is indeed not bad, but it hasn't reached the effect of the 4 revolutions soul-nourishing pill. Therefore, my Yazi auction house can trade with fellow immortal, but the amount..." After saying that, Shin Kong also cautiously told him the number. If the immortal palace hadn't interfered, Xiaohua might not have known the importance of his soul-nourishing pills, and he might have been bewitched by Shin Kong. However, since the immortal palace couldn't provide it, he could only compete with Yazi in this world. Therefore, Xiaohua began to bargain without hesitation. However, after a few exchanges, Xiaohua was defeated. After all, the yuaning was something that Xiaohua had to obtain. Shin Kong, who had grasped this crucial point, didn't care about Xiaohua's tricks at all. He casually made some concessions and refused to relent. Xiaohua had no choice but to follow Shin Kong's instructions and take out a sufficient amount of soul-nourishing pills. However, when Xiaohua sent the souls of the 13 yuaning into his lower dantian to nourish them, a smile appeared on his face again. Refining the soul-nourishing pill was as easy as lifting a finger for the green-robed Xiaohua. If not for the lack of time, Xiaohua was prepared to let the soul cultivator Xiaohua refine the soul-nourishing pill. Presumably, the soul-nourishing pill refined by the old man would be even better than this soul-nourishing pill, right? In exchange for 13 nascent soul spirit bodies that can cultivate scattered soul, no matter how you look at it, Xiaohua has gained a huge advantage. These are the credentials of the 2 distinguished guests. Shin Kong looked at Xiaohua, then looked at the somewhat dazed person from the immortal palace. He took out 2 silver Yazi statues from his bosom, waved his hand, and gave them to the 2 people, saying, "Since the 2 immortal friends stepped out of the auction, as long as you bid in the business of my North Sea Dragon Palace, you will enjoy a certain discount. For the specific list and content, please refer to the records in the credentials." Immortal friend Shin. How could the person from the immortal palace care about some small favor from the North Sea Dragon Palace? He took the credentials and asked with extreme unwillingness, "I don't know what that immortal friend used." This person from the immortal palace had been sitting there like a mountain and bidding with Xiaohua. Although he had been teased by Xiaohua time and time again, he was still able to maintain his composure and did not force Shin Kong to trade his nascent soul as soon as possible. This was because he believed that there was nothing the immortal palace couldn't take out. Even when he later realized that Xiaohua might be a Buddhist cultivator, he didn't panic too much. After all, on the hidden immortal continent, the token of the immortal palace was much more useful than a Buddhist cultivator. But he really didn't expect that in the end, things would actually fall short of success. He really couldn't figure out what good thing a Buddhist cultivator could give to the North Sea Dragon Palace. Unfortunately, before he could finish speaking, Shin Kong waved his hand and said with a smile, "This is a secret of my North Sea Dragon Palace. It has nothing to do with others." Immortal friends, next is the fish slave auction that you have been waiting for a long time. Are you ready? We are ready. Several monsters with loud voices roared in unison. Their eyes were immediately filled with bestial bloodlust. Clap, clap. Shin Kong chuckled. He clapped his hands lightly, and the entire auction hall suddenly turned dark. At the instant darkness enveloped it, the sound of a flute leisurely resounded from the darkness, and the clamorous auction hall hurriedly quieted down. After that, A ray of light that seemed like a dream appeared at the center of the auction hall. As the light scattered, a pure white body that seemed like a crystal appeared within the light. The body was as white as jade, and traces of red were faintly discernible within the whiteness. Moreover, a naked mermaid had appeared within the light. 1,000,000 sea crystals. Just as the entire auction hall was swallowing saliva, a faint voice broke the silence of the auction hall. The legendary, throwing a brick to attract jade, was probably like this. After 1,000,000, 1,000,000, 2,000,000, etc., all of them were attracted. What the monsters couldn't stand the most was that whenever a monster made a bid, the mermaid would swing her tail and swim towards that monster. And when a new bid was made, the mermaid would glare at that monster with hidden bitterness and swim to another place. The entire auction hall was pitch black. The mermaid, cloaked in multicolored light, could be seen seductively swimming around above the heads of the monsters. It was as if the darkness was the sea she was swimming in. Disciple. In the darkness, Xiaohua was somewhat bewildered. He transmitted his voice, "This mermaid. What's the use of bidding for it?" "That. Master, if you want to know, why don't you bid for one? Disciple doesn't have a master's wife." "Shut up." Xiaohua scolded, "Be careful, or I'll buy one for you. Let Bayamo ignore you again." "Yes, master." Fuji One was well behaved, but his eyes were dishonestly sweeping over the mermaid's body. This kind of tofu, any male who had touched meat, would not let it go. In the end, this lovely mermaid was bought by a monster with a price that made Xiaohua's throat dry. Cough, cough. Actually, the price was not necessarily high. The problem was that Xiaohua's throat had been dry ever since the mermaid came out. Of course, not all monsters and humans were attracted by this extremely tempting mermaid. The immortal envoy from the immortal palace sat on the chair and used his hand to pinch his chin as he secretly pondered. No matter if it was pondering about Xiaohua's origin or how to snatch the nascent soul from Xiaohua's hands. Unfortunately, although the restrictions of the Yazi auction hall looked simple and didn't have any special places to hide the figures of humans or monsters, the key point was that the faces were blurred. Moreover, he also knew that after the auction, the entire auction hall would have more than 10 exits. At that time, the lights and shadows would change, and no one would know who left from where. He really wouldn't be able to find where Xiaohua went. Perhaps. I can only go out and make arrangements in advance. The immortal envoy from the immortal palace was somewhat helpless. Although he also knew that after the auction, who knew how many monsters would leave from here? How could he possibly find traces of Xiaohua? However, since he knew that Xiaohua was the Buddhist sect's bodhisattva, perhaps it would be of some help. There were a total of 8 mermaids who acted as fish slaves, and each of them bid an extremely high price. Among these 8 mermaids, there were also some rare and valiant demonic beasts. However, those were just decorations and couldn't even be considered as green leaves. When the last mermaid fell into the arms of a monster, the entire auction hall was filled with light. Shin Kong flew out from the center of the auction hall and said with a smile, "Many thanks for your support, fellow immortals. Tonight's auction is over. Next will be the Yazi Battle Hall's Battle Hall. Fellow immortals are welcome to participate. If you don't want to participate, you can leave when the demonic formation in the auction hall changes. Fellow immortals, please don't worry. The changes in the demonic formation will completely conceal your whereabouts. No one will know where you will leave from. Fellow immortals who don't want to leave, please don't worry. Your seats will also change when the demonic formation changes. No one will know where you will sit in a while." After saying that, Shin Kong nodded a few times. He raised his hands and cupped them before his figure disappeared. Looking back at the auction ground that was originally as smooth as flowing water, there were some changes slowly taking place in the center of the auction ground. Several holes with fences appeared on the 4 walls. Every fence had a water blue brilliance on it, blocking the Yuan's senses and vision of the demons. However, from the holes, a series of deafening roars came out. Hearing that the auction had ended, Xiaohua stood up. However, when he heard Shin Kong mention the wrestling competition, Xiaohua's heart skipped a beat. He immediately thought of the 2 demonic beasts, the Kunli and the rhinoceros, who were fighting each other at the beginning of the auction. The fight between the two demonic beasts should be the so-called wrestling competition. However, Xiaohua was thinking more than that. He clearly remembered that when he met Xiao Jian and Yuanya in the early years, Xiao Jian once said that Yuanya was picked up in a battle hall. Moreover, when he picked up Yuanya, he also promised the battle hall that when Yuanya came back to life, he would go to the battle hall to participate in a battle hall. This was the price he had to pay for taking Yuanya away. Although this period of time should have already passed, and Xiaohua had not seen an arena in the hidden immortal continent for so many years, Xiaohua had almost forgotten about it. However, the appearance of the Yazi arena once again brought back this not-so-distant memory. A good event where a pie falls from the sky. Cool phones are waiting for you. -13. Chapter 39-31. Xiaohua thought for a while and said in a low voice, "Disciple, I have some things to ask Yuanya to come out. You go back to the Kunlun Wonderland to cultivate first." "Yes, master." Fu Jiwen looked at the changing scenery around him and knew that the demon formation had been activated. It was a good opportunity for him to leave. Xiaohua released his soul consciousness and formed a seal with his hands. He sent Fu Jiwen back to the space with a wave of his sleeve and then pulled Yuanya out. Xiaohua's actions were very secretive. His current cultivation was high enough. This moment of action did not attract the attention of any demon race or even the North Sea Dragon Palace. "Master." Yuanya was a little stunned when he was suddenly pulled out. When he looked around, he hurriedly bowed. "No need to be so polite," Xiaohua said. His eyes turned slightly. The mana around his body flashed, and his face turned into Xiao Jian's appearance. Yuanya was naturally puzzled when he saw Xiaohua's transformation. However, looking at Xiao Jian's familiar face, Yuanya's eyes were filled with sadness and his heart was filled with mixed feelings. "Disciple, don't be anxious. Wait a while and look around," Xiaohua said in a low voice. "I remember that you came from the arena. You still owe the arena a fight. This kind of thing is karma. If you don't understand it, it might have nothing to do with your current cultivation. However, who knows what kind of trouble it will cause in the future?" Yuanya looked around. The demon matrix was still changing, and there were also water ripples beneath him. He couldn't see anything, so he said, "Master told me about this. I had already fainted and didn't know anything. I don't know if what Master said is true." The master Yuanya mentioned was naturally Xiao Jian. At this time, Yuanya still called Xiao Jian Master. This was also his nature. Xiaohua also sighed slightly when he heard this. Whether Xiao Jian's words were true or false, only he himself knew. The karma between Yuanya and the arena might be made up by Xiao Jian. No matter what, just believe it for now. Xiaohua sighed. Yuanya nodded. "I will listen to Master's instructions. I will return it to them. I don't want to owe anyone a favor. It's just that this disciple doesn't know where the gladiator arena is, and I don't know how to return it to him. Hee, take a look over there." Xiaohua laughed as he raised his hand and pointed at the center of the auction hall. Hiss. Yuanya raised his head to look and unconsciously sucked in a breath of cold air. His hands involuntarily clenched into fists, and the veins on his arms bulged like dragons. Even his body was trembling slightly, and his teeth were tightly clenched together. Where Yuanya's gaze landed, the originally flat ground was now filled with many stones. The stones were in an irregular shape. There was grass, mud, and even some sharp spikes on the ground between the stones. In addition to the stones, there was some scarlet water around the ground. Some white bones that had not been corroded floated on the water. Some bubbles appeared in the water. It looked extremely poisonous. On the left side of the holes in the walls, there were bloodstains all over. There were even some skeletons and white bones scattered on the ground. It looked very eerie. Seeing Yuanya's strange behavior, Xiaohua already understood. Even if this gladiator arena was not the gladiator arena that Yuanya used to be in, it must have some connection to that place. "Master." Yuanya calmed down with great difficulty. He looked at Xiaohua and said, "This gladiator arena is very similar to the gladiator arena that Disciple used to be in, but it is not the gladiator arena that Disciple used to be in." And Xiaohua nodded and said, "Sit here and take a look. Master will think about what to do." "Yes, Master." Yuanya gently sat down and looked at the gladiator arena that was gradually becoming clear. He gradually became confused, cold, nostalgic, and confused. All kinds of emotions surged out like bubbles. Xiao Hua paid attention to Yuan Ye's expression and secretly nodded. He understood that this gladiator arena was where Yuan Ye went after leaving the mystic Jade Dark Forest. Other than Diawu, this gladiator arena was probably one of Yuan Ye's worries. Diawu's worries had already been solved by Diawu, and the gladiator arena's worries would also be solved today. Calling Yuan Ye out was definitely the right decision. A moment later, all the seats became clear. The figures of the monster race and human race on the seats also began to appear. Sure enough, as Xian Kong said, the seats were completely messed up. Xiao Hua had already moved to another place and was much closer to the gladiator arena. Even if Xiao Hua spoke now, the celestial emissaries of the celestial palace would not be able to find him. Dong dong dong. A series of military drums sounded, and a bloody color suddenly appeared in the center of the gladiator arena. The bloody color became even bigger, and in a moment, it formed a ball of blood that was dozens of feet large in the air. Dong! The military drums sounded in unison, and then two large hands stretched out from the center of the blood ball. These large hands were furry and had sharp armor that flashed with a cold light. The large hands tore left and right, and the entire blood ball opened like a curtain of snow. A flood dragon wearing blood armor rushed out from within. This flood dragon's blood armor was engraved with complicated demon characters. The demon characters were covered with thick blood marks, and a strong murderous aura was emitted from this blood armor. Not to mention this flood dragon's huge body. On its ferocious flood dragon face, there was a deep blood mark that cut its entire face in half. Its already terrifying face revealed a murderous aura. When the flood dragon walked out of the blood ball, the entire blood ball turned into a blood cloud and landed under the flood dragon's feet. The flood dragon raised its head and swept its cold gaze across the faces of all the monster race. Then, it cupped its hands and said, "This old man is Ao Feng from the Yazi Gladiator Arena. Greetings, fellow immortals." However, before the demon race could make a move, Ma Yingfeng said again, "Before the auction, I believe all of you have already seen the battle between Kunli and the rhinoceros. This old man can guarantee that it was merely an appetizer. The following battle will be 100 times more exciting than the previous one." "Good," the monster race loudly shouted. The blood chi that they did not vent on the mermaid rushed to their heads again. Today's battle will be divided into 10 battles. Ma Yingfeng's expression did not change. He still said coldly, "Every round has 2 demon beasts, or many demon beasts fighting. Fellow immortals, you can bet on which demon beast will win based on your own judgment." Ao Feng then said a lot more. It was nothing more than how to bet, how to win, and how to get the sea crystals that you want. However, Xiao Hua did not hear any of this. He was thinking about how to negotiate with the Yazi Gladiator Arena about Yuan Ye. In the end, Ao Feng said, "The corpse of the defeated monster will be the same as the previous auction. Fellow immortals who are interested can bid. As for the winning monster, if any fellow immortals are not satisfied, they can also come out and challenge. However, my Yazi Gladiator Arena will not be responsible for the life and death of the fellow immortals. Of course, if fellow immortals win, then fellow immortals can take away 70% of the bets that fellow immortals have placed on fellow immortals." Damn it, the last time I saw a bear spirit, he earned 2 million sea crystals. That bear spirit wasn't beaten down by a demonic beast, but was beaten down by sea crystals. A demonic beast with a loud voice shouted, "Today, I want a challenge too." Good. If fellow immortals are interested, you can go to the side door to register now. Because there are only 10 matches, only 10 immortal friends can participate in the matches tonight. Just as Ma Yingfeng finished speaking, several whirlwinds appeared and several demons flew towards the side door that was shining with light. See, hearing that there were so many benefits to challenging, Xiao Hua sucked in a breath of cold air. He could not help but have doubts in his heart. Could it be, this is Xiao Jian's lie? He said there was a battle with the arena. Could it be that he wants to earn primeval stones? Is he trying to deceive Yuan Ye? Damn it, don't push, don't push. Xiao Hua looked over. In just an instant, There were already dozens of large monsters piled up at the side door. A few monsters were squeezed in the middle and shouted. Aophone glanced at them and said, "However, fellow immortals who are preparing for the battle, please pay attention. In my Yazi Gladiator arena, no demonic techniques can be used. As long as you enter the arena, all of your cultivation will be restricted. All of your fights will have to rely on your body. Also, my Yazi Gladiator arena divides the monster race into 8 levels. If fellow immortal's body is stronger than the monster race, then you can only be restricted again until your body reaches the same level. Why didn't you say so earlier?" When the demon clan members who were huddled together heard this, they were all shocked. Of course, their physical bodies were strong, but they were still inferior to Kuan Lai and the male rhinoceros in the arena. Moreover, Ma Jinfeng's last words had killed off the idea of some monster race cultivators who wanted to rely on their bodies that had been tempered for countless years to bully monster beasts. Fellow immortals, go back to your seats and think about it. It won't be too late to make a decision after the battle starts. Aophone did not miss the opportunity to say. Since there was a way out, the dozens of demons naturally scattered like monkeys when the tree fell. Aophone didn't delay and pointed at the bloody walls and said, "Fellow immortals, today's first battle is Ku Pai against John Hong." Dong, dong, dong. Following the beating of the war drums, dark green demonic clouds emerged from the 2 holes. Furious roars resounded throughout the entire arena. Then, 2 huge cages flew out from the holes. The cages were made of thick ice pillars. There was a layer of demonic runes on the pillars. Looking inside the cages, one was the huge Ku Pai, and the other was the bad-tempered John Hong. Ku Pai was close to 100 feet in size. Its forelegs were as solid as stone pillars. On its back, there were 4 layers of scales that looked like iron sheets. The edges of each scale were extremely sharp. Ku Pai's head was like a snake's head. On its huge head, there was a 1-meter-long spike. At this moment, Ku Pai was lazily standing in the cage. Its snake-like head peeked out of the cage, and its dark eyes looked around. Zhan Hong was a square-shaped monster. Its body was covered in scales, and its head, which had almost no neck, was hexagonal. There was a sharp mane at the junction of each side, and the mane was flashing with a blue luster. At this moment, Zhan Hong was not as calm as Ku Pai. Instead, it roared and slammed into the ice pillars of the cage. Every time it slammed into the ice pillars, the demonic runes on them flashed rapidly. What a good event for a pie in the sky. Cool phones waiting for you. -13. Chapter 39-32. Fellow immortals, you can place your bets and see which demonic beast will win. Ma Yingfeng urged the blood-red demonic cloud and flew to the left of the 2 cages. He took out a steel spear from his heaven and earth bracelet and waved it. The 2 cages flew out of the arena and floated in front of the eyes of the entire demon race and human race so that the demons could see clearly. Come, disciple, follow your master. Regardless of whether there is one or not, we still have to confirm it first. Xiao Hua looked at the cages flying around and felt disgust in his heart. He stood up and said while walking towards the side door. Yes, Yuanya responded and stood up to follow him. Walking to the side door, there was a shrimp soldier standing there bored to death. Seeing the 2 humans coming over, he pointed the halberd in his hand and said, "Human, stop. This is the arena's forbidden area. Humans are not allowed to enter. This old man's disciple wants to challenge a demonic beast." Xiao Hua looked at the halberd and said indifferently without stopping his steps, You want to challenge a demonic beast?" That shrimp soldier was stunned. He had never heard of a human challenging a demonic beast in the arena. That's right. Xiao Hua nodded. However, the demonic beast my disciple wants to challenge might not be the one in the arena. You may not be able to make the decision on this matter. Call the manager over. Hee. That shrimp soldier laughed nastily and said, "This old man has seen a lot of people, but I have never seen a person who wants to court death so much. This old man is responsible for registering the demonic beasts that want to challenge. If your disciple wants to challenge, he can do so. If he doesn't want to challenge, he can also scram. As for finding a manager, do you humans think you have the qualifications?" How dare you? Xiao Hua's eyes flashed with a cold light. That shrimp soldier suddenly felt an aura that was even more vast than the waves coming from Xiao Hua's body. Moreover, this aura seemed to have grown sharp teeth and bit out his fear in an instant. The shrimp soldier was horrified, and the halberd in his hand fell to the ground. His body trembled as he quickly retreated. Humph! Xiao Hua coldly snorted, withdrew his pressure, and coldly said, "Damn thing. Why aren't you calling out the person in charge?" Yes, I'll go now." That shrimp soldier didn't even care about his halberd as he hurriedly ran over. In just a short moment, Shin Kong actually flew out from inside. He looked at Xiao Hua with a frown and said, "Fellow immortal, if you want to fight, you can register. Why do you need me to come out?" "Fellow immortal Shin, I am Xiao Jian." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said with a smile, "This auction allowed me to witness fellow immortal's elegance. Although I didn't bid for anything, fellow immortal left a deep impression on me. As the saying goes, don't slap a smiling person." Even though Shin Kong frowned when he heard Xiao Hua speak like this, he couldn't bring himself to flare up, so he could only nod and say, "Fellow immortal, feel free to speak your mind." "Oh, it's like this." Xiao Hua told him about Abyss Cliff, and then he said in the end, "Even though I remember this agreement with the arena, I've always been drifting outside all these years, and I didn't have the time to return. When I saw the Yazi arena tonight, I thought of this, so I came to look for fellow immortal Shin. Is that arena the North Sea Dragon Palace's arena? If this disciple of mine is at the Yazi arena, can he fulfill the agreement as well?" "I see." Shin Kong nodded when he heard this and said, "My Northern Sea Dragon Palace has the Chonyo Arena, Yinzi Arena, Bayan Arena, Paleo Arena, Taotai Arena, Basha Arena, Bayan Arena, Fuan Arena, and Chi-An Arena within the 9 prefectures of Hidden Immortal Continent. If what fellow immortal said is true, then it's one of the other 8 arenas. Could it be that there aren't any other arenas on Hidden Immortal Continent?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. Shin Kong nodded and said proudly, "That's right. Since my North Sea Dragon Palace wants to build an arena, how can any other demon race or human race build an arena?" As he spoke, Shin Kong looked at Xiao Hua from top to bottom, and then looked at Abyss Cliff and said meaningfully, "It seems that fellow immortal is a man of his word. You still remember the promise you made with my North Sea Dragon Palace. In this way, you've profited from a disaster. This old man has made the decision to temporarily exempt the 2 of you from the 10,000 kill order. Similarly, according to the previous agreement, this Do Nu must have his final battle in my Yazi arena. As long as he wins, this old man can remove the Do slave seal from my North Sea Dragon Palace. He can then leave this place safely and regain his freedom." "Oh, 10,000 kill order? Warrior slave seal?" Xiao Hua was stunned. He didn't expect that there were so many secrets. Moreover, Abyss Cliff had been following Xiao Jian, so Xiao Hua didn't carefully investigate whether there were any restrictions in Abyss Cliff's body. However, Xiao Hua also believed that even if he really did investigate, with the methods of the North Sea Dragon Palace, he definitely wouldn't find anything strange. Shin Kong said proudly, "Of course. Fellow immortal, do you think it's so easy to get out of my North Sea Dragon Palace's arena? If it weren't for the warrior slave seal, how could the dragon generals of other arenas dare to easily release the warrior slave recorded in the battle strategy? Moreover, fellow immortal, you didn't come to my North Sea Dragon Palace at the agreed time. Your name and the warrior slave's name have already been on the arena's 10,000 kill order. Perhaps the arena didn't have time to find you, or maybe they didn't find you. But if you didn't take the initiative to come to my Yazi arena, I'm afraid that the next time you see the demon race in the arena, you will be killed as soon as you see them. I'm lucky." Xiao Hua had already concealed his cultivation at this time. Even Shin Kong could only see that Xiao Hua's cultivation was only at the early yuanying stage. He was so lucky that Shin Kong couldn't see any flaws. "Fellow immortal, please wait a moment." As Shin Kong spoke, he took out something that looked like a dragon horn from the Cosmos bracelet on his arm. With a pu, he spat out a mouthful of demon chi, and the dragon horn let out a clear cry. Soon after, a triangular bronze mirror shot out from the dragon horn. There were 3 Yazis coiled around the edges of the bronze mirror, and their heads and tails were connected. Moreover, There was also a faint opening of a Yazi's mouth in the bronze mirror. A flickering jade sword could be seen faintly within the mouth. Fellow immortal, you don't have to resist. This old man's Yazi battle strategy is to check fellow immortal's appearance and the record of the warrior slave. Shin Kong reminded. Without waiting for Xiao Hua to say anything, he shook his hand and the so-called battle strategy flashed out a golden light curtain that covered Xiao Hua and Yuanya. Xiao Hua frowned and then relaxed. He was extremely uncomfortable with Shin Kong's contempt, but thinking that it was for the sake of Yuanya's warrior slave seal and to avoid trouble in the future, he ignored it. Clang. A sword cry came from the battle strategy. Dozens of sword lights that looked like swimming dragons shot out from the Yazi's mouth and pierced towards Xiao Hua and Yuanya. At this moment, the battle strategy in Shin Kong's hand had turned blood red. Return, Shin Kong roared. The battle strategy in his hand produced a blood-red suction force. The dozens of sword lights shattered and returned to the battle strategy. Xiao Hua's face was pale as he said in a low voice, "Fellow immortal Shin, what's going on?" Shin Kong looked at Xiao Hua and said indifferently, "Sure enough, it's not out of my expectations. You two have already been placed on the 10,000 kill command. But now, this old man has temporarily suppressed the 10,000 kill command. As long as this warrior slave wins a battle, this old man can remove the warrior slave seal for him." "All right." Xiao Hua nodded and said, "Then let's do it according to the rules of the North Sea Dragon Palace." At this point, Xiao Hua suddenly asked, "Oh, right? If this disciple of I wins, can I take the bet?" "Let this old man take a look." Shin Kong didn't find it strange at all. His gaze fell onto the battle strategy. At this moment, the battle strategy had the image of Xiao Jian and Yuanya on it. There were also some densely packed demon characters below. Baxia, level 4 gladiator beast, was taken away from the arena by the cultivator of the Dao sect, Xiao Jian, because he was seriously ill. Before he left, he made an agreement that if he recovered from his illness, he would return to the arena 3 years later for the final battle. 20% of the bet would belong to Xiao Jian. Baxia's warrior slave seal hasn't been removed, and he hasn't returned as promised. I hereby issue the 10,000 kill command. Anyone who sees him is to kill him and receive a reward of 5,000. Shin Kong spoke word by word in an extremely cold manner. Haha, good. Xiao Hua clapped his hands and laughed. That laughter of his had a profound meaning. When he looked at Yuanya again, the reluctance in his eyes had gradually disappeared. At this moment, he finally understood why Xiao Jian had rescued him from the arena. "Fellow immortal, did you hear?" Shin Kong looked up at Xiao Hua and said, "Baxia's warrior slave seal won't be removed as long as he doesn't die. Therefore, fellow immortal coming to my Yazi arena today was the most correct choice." Yes, I'll have to trouble fellow immortal." Xiao Hua's smile was so wretched that it was no different from Xiao Jian's. Shin Kong looked at Yuanya and said, Baxia, come with me." "Yes." Yuanya replied expressionlessly. "That." Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Fellow immortal Shin, I wonder how my disciple will fight? Can you tell I a little bit?" Shin Kong was a bit impatient and said indifferently, "It's just a level 4 gladiator beast. This old man will arrange a level 4 gladiator beast to fight with him. I won't make things too difficult for him." Yes, Xiao Hua nodded and asked carefully, "Then can he use weapons?" "Of course he can't use weapons. Even Dao sect cultivation methods can't." Shin Kong waved his hand and said, "Before entering the arena, a demon general will seal his lower Deity." "Yes, I'll have to trouble fellow immortal Shin." Xiao Hua smiled and said again. Then, he patted Yuanya and said, "Disciple, the happiness of the rest of Master's life is in your hands. In a while, Master will bet more on you." Yes, Yuanya hated Xiao Jian's appearance. Although he knew that this was Xiao Hua, he still replied indifferently. Xiao Hua naturally wouldn't be at ease with Shin Kong taking Yuanya away like this. Instead, he secretly placed a strand of soul consciousness on Yuanya's body. Then, he turned around and prepared to leave. However, after taking 2 steps, Xiao Hua was still worried and pulled the green-robed Xiao Hua out of the space. He had him control the formless nascent soul and follow behind Yuanya. What a good event where a pie falls from the sky. Cool phones are waiting for you. -13. Chapter 39-33. When Xiaohua returned to the arena and sat back in his seat, he could no longer sense that strand of soul consciousness. The North Sea Dragon Palace's demonic array restriction had indeed exceeded Xiaohua's expectations. However, with the green-robed Xiaohua by Yuan Ye's side, Xiaohua was not afraid of any special accidents. When Xiaohua sat down, the battle between Ku Pai and Zhan Hong was nearing its end. The two demonic beasts were covered in wounds and blood. However, for the sake of survival, they continued to roar and pounce at each other. Every time they attacked, the two demonic beasts would spill a lot of blood and flesh from their bodies. AI, such a bloody battle. No wonder Yuan Ye doesn't want to remember it. In this cruel battle arena, he doesn't even have a name. Xiaohua looked at the bloody battle and thought to himself, Basha 4, 7, 8, 8, 6, 9, 8, 6, 9, which is the Basha Gladiator Arena. Furthermore, it's a level 4 gladiator beast. Zhan Hong was like a small mountain, fiercely charging at Ku Pai. Ku Pai stretched out his head and bit Zhan Hong's back. Even his sharp thorns tore off large chunks of Zhan Hong's flesh. However, Zhan Hong stubbornly held on to Ku Pai's heart. Boom! A loud sound sent Ku Pai crashing into the wall of the arena. The entire arena seemed to be shaking. Ku Pai struggled for a moment before finally lowering his unyielding head. Boom! All the beasts were excited. The screams and roars from before became louder and louder. Perhaps it was because they won the bet, or perhaps it was because of the excitement. Xiaohua sighed slightly. He sat on his seat and closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. Hee, fellow immortal, do you feel that it's a bit bloody? Suddenly, a voice appeared in Xiaohua's heart. Xiaohua didn't open his eyes. His consciousness entered his body and saw that the scholarly cultivator Xiaohua was already standing in his middle dantian with a smile on his face. The scholarly cultivator Xiaohua from before didn't have the same outstanding appearance as before. All the sword chi and sword forms had disappeared. Only the pages of his book remained. Inscriptions of armor flashed in his eyes. The aura of the inscriptions of armor was far stronger than that of ordinary scholarly cultivators. However, the current Confucian cultivator Xiaohua was no different from an ordinary Confucian scholar. He wore a light cyan Confucian robe, and his refined temperament was revealed from his clear black and white eyes. That upright and plain-spoken aura could only be faintly seen between his brows. As for the sharp sword from before, it was still hanging at his waist. The scabbard was also gone. However, the sword didn't have any sword chi. It looked no different from an ordinary sword. Fellow immortal, Jade Archive Xiaohua cupped his hands and said, I didn't expect fellow immortal to enter the state of concealing his divine splendor in just a few days. Of course. The Confucian cultivator Xiaohua lightly returned the greeting. Before I started cultivating as a Confucian cultivator, I was originally residing within Sword Intent. My understanding of Sword Intent and Sword Chi has already penetrated deep into my bones. Although the Sword Intent of Cast Emotion Mountain was formed by heaven and earth, in my eyes, it was just a shocking sword strike. Fellow immortal, you've already comprehended this heaven sword. Now that I've entered seclusion to comprehend it, it's a matter of course. Of course, the comprehension of the heaven earth sword is far from something we can achieve in one go. I still have a long way to go. The sword Tao is also the Confucian Tao, and it's also the heavenly Tao. I've obtained the soul of heaven and the soul of the earth. I've obtained the true essence of scholarly cultivation. My current cultivation has reached a higher level. This is what we should celebrate. Indeed. Jade Xiaohua nodded with a smile. With a calm heart, all things will not perish. With a clear heart, there won't be a speck of dust. Monk Subhoodie has been in seclusion for so long, yet he still hasn't come out. His path in the Buddhist sect is too difficult. Xiaohua said, however, some of the words of the Buddhist sect are very reasonable. If I had seen such bloodshed before, I would have wanted to use my sword to kill all these demons and monsters. But now that I've grasped the heaven sword, heaven earth sword, I somewhat understand that killing and bloodshed are a part of the world. They can never be eliminated by killing to stop killing. Previously, on the Dawn Rain continent, only sword transformation realm cultivators participated in the sword Dao battle. Those spirit swords and divine swords simply disdained to participate. Even in the eyes of Dao sect cultivators like Deity transformation realm cultivators, I'm afraid they also have such thoughts, right? I'm just soft-hearted. I can't see killing. Jade Xiaohua said with a smile. I can't wait for the people of the world to sing and laugh happily. Harmony breeds wealth. Singing and laughing isn't necessarily what fellow immortal pursues. Xiaohua said with a smile. Harmony breeds wealth. Haha, the same. The same. Jade Xiaohua clapped. Then, Xiaohua said with a serious expression, fellow immortal, when fellow immortal Tempered Bones asked you for a cultivation method, I thought it was a bit funny. But now, in my Confucian cultivation method, the heaven soul is complete and the earth soul is missing. The 5 cheese unifications cultivation method is still missing the water cheese unifications. Of the 5 heavenly hearts, besides the new heavenly heart which is half a piece, I still lack a piece of heavenly heart. Fellow immortal, why is it so difficult for you to get a cultivation method? Jade Xiaohua smiled bitterly and raised his hand to point at Xiaohua. Fellow immortal, you're not satisfied. The 5 cheese unifications cultivation method is the top cultivation method for Confucian cultivators. How could it be easy to get? Fellow immortal, you're already lucky to be able to see the secret inside. Especially, the mystery of the heavenly book's true solution is a secret that even Zhu Zi, Zhang Zi, and Sun Zi couldn't comprehend. We actually managed to see it by chance. The path to heaven has already appeared under our feet. Why should we be in a hurry? Haste makes waste. It's always been a big taboo in cultivation. I know. Xiaohua said with a smile. I'm just reminding fellow immortal. When you're proud, don't forget about me. You and I are the right path. I understand. Jade Xiaohua waved his hand and prepared to leave. After the auction, I will go look for the U province cauldron. Heavens can only rely on chance. I can't promise you anything. Thank you for your trouble, fellow immortal. Xiaohua returned the greeting with a smile. Xiaohua's mind left his middle dantian. The entire arena was still noisy like fire. There was simply no one sitting quietly like Xiaohua. After all, those who didn't leave the auction and participated in the arena were all here for this kind of blood and excitement. How could they give up on a regular scene? After another half an hour, seeing a large rock-like demonic beast tearing apart and devouring a duck-like demonic beast, Ma Yingfeng once again stepped on a blood cloud and appeared in the sky above the arena. Fellow immortals. Ma Yingfeng's face was still cold. He said word by word, previously, this old man said that my Yazi Arena arranged 10 matches for fellow immortals to enjoy. However, today, there is a beast that is about to leave the arena for its last match. Therefore, my Yazi Arena temporarily added a match. Please enjoy. As he spoke, 2 cages flew out from the distant stone wall. One of them was naturally Yuanya. At this time, Yuanya had already changed his Taoist robe and was wearing some clothes sewn from bee skin. It only covered his vital parts. Yuanya looked very calm inside the cage, but a kind of barbaric and bloody aura uncontrollably rushed out from his body. Looking at the other cage, there was a huge sea python. Not to mention the length of this sea python, its body was thicker than Yuanya's. What was special was that the sea python was constantly swimming in the cage. The cage's restriction was slightly swaying. Layers of demonic characters flashed from time to time, as if the cage's restriction was unable to trap the sea python. Human? Seeing Yuanya, the crowd of demonic beasts and humans were all shocked. They had seen demonic beasts and sea beasts fighting in the arena, but they had never seen a human before. Even though it was their former residence, they still couldn't believe their eyes. Fellow immortals. Ma Yingfeng explained, this human race's gladiator beast is not from my Yazi Gladiator Arena. He belongs to Hidden Immortal Continent's Inland Ba Shang Gladiator Arena. In the Inland Gladiator Arena, other than demonic beasts, there are also some humans. These humans are usually gifted and different from ordinary cultivators. This gladiator beast was Basha 4, 7, 8, 8, 6, 9. It was a grade 4 demonic beast. Today is this beast's last match. If he wins, he can regain his freedom. Good. The crowd of demonic beasts shouted and became increasingly excited. The majority of them had never seen a battle between a human and a demonic beast. Thinking that such a small human was going to face such a huge sea beast, how could he suppress himself? Okay, fellow immortals, you can place your bets, Ma Yingfeng said indifferently. He waved his hand, and the two cages landed on the arena. I throw the horned python. A demonic beast hurriedly patted his seat and took out a universe bangle. A bubble emerged from the seat. The demonic beast threw the universe bangle into the bubble and shouted, "This horned python's godly strength is astonishing. Even I had to escape when facing it. How can a human be its match?" That's right. This horned python is much more powerful than the male rhinoceros. Once it coils around you, even the male rhinoceros will end up with broken bones. The Yazi Gladiator Arena sure is scheming. Many demons were even muttering softly. This is the final battle of the human race. They actually arranged for a horned python. How can this human escape from the arena's grasp? Not necessarily. Some demonic beasts laughed and said, "Don't forget that this human is Baksang, a level 4 demonic beast. If he doesn't have some strength, how can he be a level 4 demonic beast?" What's more special is that this human is the arena beast of Baksang Arena. After living for so long, he actually made it to the last match. I don't believe that he doesn't have any special talents. That's right, that's right. Another demonic beast chimed in. Humans are the most cunning. This fellow's head is comparable to a demonic beast. We will also bet on this human's victory. Nonsense. Another demonic beast shouted. No matter how cunning this human is or how special his talents are, just look at the size of this horned python. It's only in the arena now. If it was placed in the ocean, any ship would be crushed by it. Baksang is a human and has some brains. But what's the use of his brains when facing such a gigantic beast? In the words of the human race, put yourself in its shoes. If you and I were facing this horned python, without using demonic arts or demon weapons, what are our chances of victory? -13. Chapter 39-34. Yes, yes. Following which, a few brainless demons chimed in. It was as though these demons were the brains of the Yazi Gladiator Arena. After a while, the Qinkuan rings were taken away by the Yazi Gladiator Arena one by one. Xiao Hua was originally resting with his eyes closed, but when he heard that Yuanya came out, he could no longer calm down and opened his eyes. When he heard the unscrupulous whispers of the nearby demons, he couldn't help but frown. What the demons said was not without reason. Although Yuanya was gifted, he had not been Xiao Hua's disciple for a long time, and during this period, Xiao Hua did not give him any special guidance. To be honest, Xiao Hua was not confident about Yuanya's strength. But thinking about it, Yuanya was recorded as a level 4 gladiator beast in the arena's fighting strategy. Even if he did not practice the Fist of the North Star, his strength should still be at the level of a level 4 gladiator beast. From the style of the Yazi Gladiator Arena, it should be considered fair. Therefore, this horned python looked a little arrogant and should also be a level 4 gladiator beast. Yuanya should not be at a disadvantage against this horned python. The only thing Xiao Hua was worried about was that the Baxia Gladiator Arena was located in the interior of the hidden immortal continent. There should be fewer demons in the arena, and there should be more humans like Yuanya. Yuanya could dominate among the level 4 gladiator beasts, but that was only against humans. If he faced this horned python, he might be at a disadvantage in terms of size. Let's wait and see. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes. Green Robe has already gone, and others can't see what he does. If he doesn't succeed, this old man will also take action. It's fine if Yuanya suffers some minor injuries, but we can't let Yuanya die here. Dong! A military drum sounded. In the arena, whether it was Yuanya's cage or the horned python's cage, they suddenly disappeared, and one man and one beast fell from the sky. The horned python was originally rolling in the cage, but now that it was free, its entire body danced in the arena. Woo! A loud wind blew. Before Yuanya landed on the mountain rock, the horned python's tail drew a black line in the air and whipped towards his waist. Yuanya hurriedly urged his true energy to dodge, but his true energy was already confined by the Yazi gladiator arena. How could he still use his flying technique? Seeing the python's tail, which was larger than his body, sweeping towards him fiercer than a mountain, Yuanya had an idea. He hurriedly curled up and rolled, falling down. Just as Yuanya dodged half of the snake's tail, the snake's tail had already reached him. Yuanya's back was facing the snake's tail, making it difficult for him to move his body. He could only use his elbows to block the snake's tail. Pung! A loud sound was heard as the snake's tail vibrated in the air and struck forward again. Yuanya was sent flying like a bullet. Boom! Another loud sound was heard as Yuanya's body was smashed into a large rock. The boulder was even harder than diamond. When Yuanya's body fell, he knocked a few pieces of the boulder away. Then, Yuanya's body softly slid down the stone wall. Looking at Yuanya's back, it was already a bloody mess. There was also a pool of blood on the stone wall. Damn it! Xiao Hua's heart ached. He stood up and secretly complained to himself, "Am I too cruel? What kind of bullshit karma is this? When this old man's cultivation is deeper, I will directly use the hand of karma to block it. There is no reason for this poor child to suffer the torment of a demon beast." Good. A group of demons saw the man and the python fight and saw blood. They all shouted in ecstasy. Many demons also stood up. Looking at the horned python, it was obviously experienced in fighting. After its huge tail hit Yuanya, it swept him onto a pile of boulders. The python's body also nimbly flipped over, opened its mouth, flashed its ferocious fangs, and pounced towards Yuanya. Not good. Xiao Hua was anxious. His figure was about to flash. At this time, Yuanya, who was originally soft, just happened to land on the ground. His feet bounced on the ground, and with a whoosh, his figure suddenly flashed to the side of the boulder. Pooh! The python's head fell and hit the boulder. At the same time, the python's head rubbed against the boulder. Damn it! Xiao Hua smiled and stood still. He knew that his concern made him confused. He couldn't help but laugh at himself. Like I said, Yuanya has the strength of a 4th-level fighting beast. How could he be killed in the first battle? Now that he is injured, I'm afraid it's a trick to lure the enemy. The horned python's pounce missed, and it rolled on the boulder again. Not only did it pounce towards Yuanya with a roar, its powerful tail also whipped towards Yuanya from time to time. Looking at Yuanya again, his figure was as nimble as an ape and as alert as a squirrel. His whole body was moving around the boulder, and he always avoided the horned python's fatal attack at the most critical moment. He seemed to be handling it with ease. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Yuanya escaped to a boulder. The horned python's tail wrapped around the boulder and cut off Yuanya's escape route. The python's head once again moved towards Yuanya's waist, which was climbing on top of the boulder, and fiercely bit down. Good. Seeing that the horned python had coiled up and Yuanya had no way out, the group of demons cheered loudly again. They were ready to see how Yuanya would be bitten into two by the horned python. However, out of all the demons' expectations, Yuanya didn't dodge like before. Instead, he stomped his feet on the boulder and his whole body shot towards the python's head like a sharp arrow. The horned python hissed, and its shiny black scales trembled in excitement. Its pair of fangs were about to pierce into Yuanya's waist. At this moment, Yuanya suddenly moved his feet and his body swayed mysteriously. He suddenly executed the ethereal steps in midair and dodged the horned python's attack in an instant. He rushed into the horned python's neck. The group of demons exclaimed in disappointment. However, their exclamations had just begun when they saw Yuanya rushing into the horned python's body. His 10 fingers spread open like a pair of iron claws clasping onto the horned python's scales. With a muffled sound, green blood splattered and Yuanya's hands actually pierced into the horned python's body. Impossible. How is this possible? A few demons shouted. The horned python doesn't just have tough skin and thick flesh, its scales are even comparable to a demon artifact. Not to mention human hands. Even demon beasts or demon artifacts would only cause sparks to fly when they hit it. Roar. The horned python was in pain. Its entire body rolled on the boulder and smashed towards the ground with Yuanya. At this moment, Yuanya's arms had already completely penetrated the horned python's body, which was the so-called 3 inches of the horned python's body. However, seeing that he was about to be smashed to the ground by the horned python, Yuanya didn't dare to delay. He hurriedly pulled his arms out of the horned python's body, and his entire body shot out from the horned python's neck. Boom! The horned python's head hit the ground and blood splattered everywhere. Not only was blood flowing out from the 2 bloody holes in its neck, even the sharp edges of the boulder had pierced the python's head. Even though the horned python was injured, it didn't let go of the chance to attack Yuanya. The python's tail that was coiled on the ground stood up again and slammed straight towards Xiaohua, who had just stabilized himself. With another loud bang, the python's tail smashed down and actually created a shockwave that sent the gravel flying. Yuanya's figure dodged to the side in the nick of time. Sigh. Another group of demons sighed in unison. It wasn't clear whether they were sighing because Yuanya couldn't injure the horned python, or because the horned python couldn't kill Yuanya. However, all of the demons could see that even if Yuanya could injure the horned python, the horned python's enormous body wouldn't give Yuanya a chance to do so. The possibility of Yuanya being killed in this battle was too high. Just as these demons had this thought, the scene before their eyes almost caused their eyeballs to fall out of their sockets. Yuanya had just dodged the python's tail when he suddenly pounced towards it. His 2 large hands were once again inserted into the python's tail like a pitchfork. Not only that, Yuanya stood firmly on the ground and suddenly raised his arms. Like a dancing snake, he actually shook the horned python's enormous body into the air. The crowd of demons fell into a deathly silence at first. Then, the entire arena erupted into cries of disbelief. How is this possible? This human? How can this human be so strong? Roar. The horned python's body was shaken into the air by Yuanya. It roared and twisted, trying its best to turn its head and pounce towards Yuanya. However, Yuanya's arms had already pierced deeply into the python's tail. Even though he couldn't stand firmly on the ground due to the horned python's immense struggle and was staggering, his arms were as strong as cast iron. They continuously rolled the python's body and forced the horned python to not turn its head. Roar. The horned python roared. With a forceful turn, its body almost split into 2 as it pounced towards Yuanya. Yuanya's eyes widened. He wasn't afraid at all. Instead, he took a slight step and swung his arms in the direction of the horned python's charge. Like swinging a noodle, he smashed the horned python's enormous body onto the ground. There were naturally huge rocks and sharp spikes on the ground. In an instant, the python's entire body was covered in blood. Then, Yuanya decided to go all the way. Just like that, he tossed the horned python left and right with all his might. In less than half a meal's worth of time, the horned python was already powerless and motionless, allowing Yuanya to trample on it as he wished. Go! Seeing that the horned python's body was badly mutilated, Yuanya shouted and swung his arm. Boom! The horned python flew across half of the arena and smashed into the stone wall. Just like when Yuanya first entered the arena, the horned python fell limply under the stone wall. Green blood flowed out. Although it wasn't dead, it no longer had the strength to move. Baxia wins. Ma Jinfeng naturally stood high up in the air above the arena. When he saw how Yuanya defeated the horned python so easily, a strange look appeared in his eyes. However, he still landed calmly. With a wave of his hand, he sent Yuanya, who was covered in blood, to the entrance of the cave. -13. Chapter 39-35. Sigh. The crowd of monsters sighed. After all, only a few believed that Yuanya could win. Suddenly, another monster cried out, No, no, this Baxia is so strong. How could it be a level 4 gladiator beast? If it was level 5 or level 6, I would believe it. North Sea Dragon Palace. You have to give us an explanation. Sorry. Ma Yingfeng said indifferently, there's nothing to explain. It's recorded in my North Sea Dragon Palace's strategy book. No, no. The monsters who lost the bet were dissatisfied. Humph. Ma Yingfeng snorted coldly. If you think Baxia isn't a level 4 gladiator beast, you can bet on him. If you win, my Yazi Gladiator Arena will compensate you. Now that you have no choice, how can you blame my Yazi Gladiator Arena? All of the demons were speechless. However, looking at the expressions of these demons, they were still somewhat indignant. Why would Xiaohua care about these monsters? He happily got up and was about to walk to the side door. But at this moment, Ma Yingfeng said, if fellow immortals are unwilling, then watch the next battle. Perhaps fellow immortals will have another surprise. As he spoke, Ma Yingfeng raised his hand and pointed. Aowo! A loud and clear lion's roar came from the hole where Yuanya had disappeared, and from another hole, a small cage flew out. When Xiaohua saw the demonic beast in the cage, he couldn't help but be stunned. The cage was extremely small, even smaller than the one Yuanya was in. Inside the cage, there was a dwarf that was only 3 feet tall lying on the ground. Wasn't this the heavenly river water tribe that Xiaohua saw in the immortal town? At that moment, the dwarf was naked and covered in scales. Some of the scales had been peeled off, and some of them were damaged and blood-stained. There was a tear on his right arm, and the top of his head, which was originally covered in armor, was now empty. A pair of branches that looked like dragon horns had poked out. However, a small part of the dragon horns was broken, and there were bloodstains on them. Looking at the dwarf's lower body, other than the 2 legs that were similar to dragon claws, a dragon tail poked out from behind him. Jiangsheng! Xiaohua stopped and looked at the arena in shock. He thought to himself, isn't he the dragon general of the heavenly abode river? How did it fall into the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace? However, after thinking about it for a while, he understood that the water tribe of the Dongtian River was stirring up trouble everywhere. They wanted to incite internal strife in the Dragon Palace of the 4 Seas so that they could benefit from it. However, since they were stirring up trouble, it was inevitable that they would give themselves away. It was not too strange that Jiangsheng was captured by the North Sea Dragon Palace. However, seeing Jiangsheng in such a miserable state, and thinking back to the battle he had with him that day, Xiaohua felt very uncomfortable in his heart. If Jiangsheng flooded Longevity Town, Xiaohua should hate Jiangsheng. But if he put himself in Jiangsheng's shoes, wouldn't that dragon girl named Jianghong be 10,000 times more important than the people of Longevity Town? In particular, just a moment ago, when Yuanya was in danger, Xiaohua almost wanted to take action. That feeling of guilt had just disappeared because of Yuanya's victory. Therefore, Xiaohua understood Jiangsheng's feelings very well at that time, so it was difficult for him to feel any disgust. Since he is a hero, killing him or cutting him up is just a word. Why do you have to humiliate him like this? Xiaohua stood on the spot and looked at the introduction of Ma Jinfeng. He couldn't help but sneer. The actions of the North Sea Dragon Palace are really disappointing. In the arena, Ma Jinfeng raised his hand and pointed at Jiangsheng. He sneered and said, "This is a remnant of the Dongtian River, named Jiangsheng. He was born from the mating of the dragon race and the human race, which is the commonly seen dragon man. This dragon man has boundless strength, and in my Yazi arena, he is classified as a Class 5 monster beast. This guy killed the dragon general of the North Sea Dragon Palace and violated the dragon law of the North Sea Dragon Palace. However, considering that he has the bloodline of the dragon race, we gave him a special favor and did not kill him immediately. We allowed him to fight in the arena to atone for his crime. This fire lion, there is no need for this old man to say more. You can bet on it yourself." Perhaps it was because the crowd of monsters was a little agitated, or perhaps it was because Ma Jinfeng wanted Jiangsheng to die earlier, but the introduction of this battle was especially short. Xiaohua didn't move anymore. The crowd of monsters had already finished placing their bets. In the arena, 2 cages had already been opened. Jiangsheng was thrown to the ground. In the other cage, a fire lion with flickering flames around its body leaped into the air vigorously. It rushed out from the huge rocks and pounced towards Jiangsheng. "Bite him to death! Bite him to death!" Seeing Jiangsheng covered in wounds, How could the monsters not know that the North Sea Dragon Palace was humiliating Jiangsheng? Jiangsheng was definitely going to die in this arena? They had already placed their sea crystals on the fire lion. Seeing Jiangsheng's short body fall to the ground, the fire lion pounced towards him crazily. The monsters all shouted loudly, "Woo!" Before the fire lion pounced, it had already spat out scarlet flames from its mouth and enveloped Jiangsheng. "Ayo, ayo!" Jiangsheng cried out loudly. He rolled on the ground, trying to extinguish the flames. However, when the fire lion opened its bloody mouth and bit towards Jiangsheng, the flames on Jiangsheng's body still hadn't been extinguished. Roar! Seeing that he was about to be bitten into two, Jiangsheng also roared loudly. He jumped up from the ground in extreme madness and pounced towards the fire lion. He grew two hands and bit the fire lion. The battle between Jiangsheng and the fire lion was different from the battle between Yuan Ye and the horned python. The two monsters were completely close to each other. Not only was the fire lion's body torn by Jiangsheng's bare hands, but Jiangsheng's body was also torn by the fire lion's iron claws. Xiao Hua's gaze was attracted by this unusually bloody and intense battle. He was worried for his former opponent. This fire lion was very powerful. If Jiangsheng wasn't careful, he would be torn apart by the fire lion. Roar! The fire lion roared. It waved its left claw like a slap and slapped Jiangsheng to the ground. Then, it pounced forward and stepped on Jiangsheng's chest with its right claw. Pung! Just as the fire lion was about to pounce, Jiangsheng lifted his leg and kicked the fire lion's abdomen. Then, Jiangsheng's dragon tail suddenly swung, and the fire lion's body was thrown high into the sky. Before the fire lion could stabilize its body, Jiangsheng suddenly pounced on it. Similar to how Yuanya dealt with the horned python, Jiangsheng immediately plunged his hands into the fire lion's neck. Then, with a peub sound, his dragon tail directly stabbed into the fire lion's eyes. Ayo, ayo! The fire lion screamed and rolled on the ground. However, Jiangsheng hugged the fire lion's neck tightly and didn't let go. In just half a cup of tea's time, the fire lion's aura disappeared. It was strangled to death by Jiangsheng. Humph! Jiangsheng coldly raised his head and grabbed the fire lion. Woo! A gust of wind blew and the fire lion's corpse flew towards Si Feng above the blood clouds. How dare you? Si Feng coldly rebuked. He lifted his hand and pointed. Several blue streams of water appeared out of thin air and trapped Jiangsheng. Those streams of water quickly flowed deep into Jiangsheng's body. Not only were his scales torn off, even more blood flowed out from his wounds. Jiangsheng rolled on the ground in pain. However, he still clenched his teeth and fiercely glared at Si Feng. Damn it! Xiao Hua and Jiangsheng could be considered to have gotten to know each other through fighting. Now, they felt like heroes cherishing heroes. However, just as Xiao Hua angrily cursed, he suddenly realized that it had been a long time since the end of Yuanya's battle. Why hasn't Yuanya returned? Moreover, the green-robed Xiao Hua didn't make any movements. Xiao Hua felt that something was wrong and hastily walked to the side door. Sure enough, the smiling Xian Kong was already waiting there with the heaven and earth bracelet in his hand. Seeing Xiao Hua walk over, he smiled and waved the heaven and earth bracelet in his hand and said, "Immortal friend, why did you only come now? This old man thought that you had forgotten about the bet." "Hee, not at all, not at all," Xiao Hua said with a smile. "The battles in the Yazi Gladiator Arena were really too exciting. I took a few more glances and almost forgot about it." Hearing Xiao Hua's words, a trace of contempt flashed through Xian Kong's eyes. He handed the heaven and earth bracelet to Xiao Hua and said, "This is the agreement between Immortal Friend and my North Sea Dragon Palace. 20% of the bet is Immortal Friends." Xiao Hua took the heaven and earth bracelet and released a slightly weak divine sense. After taking a look, he was so surprised that his eyes narrowed. He cried out, "Why is it so much? Hee, Basha's strength is a little beyond our expectations. That's why almost all of our fellow immortals have placed their bets on the horned python. Just 20% of the bets is already shocking enough." Xian Kong's smile was still the same as before. He said, "However, this is only 20%. Immortal friend, Have you thought of earning more? Oh, immortal friend Xian. What do you mean? Xiao Hua put the heaven and earth bracelet into his bosom. He looked behind Xian Kong and asked curiously, "Where's Ai's disciple? Why hasn't he come out yet?" Don't worry, don't worry," Xian Kong said in a low voice. "Basha's fine now. However, this old man wants to discuss something with you, so he hasn't come out yet." "Oh, what does immortal friend want to say?" Xiao Hua rolled his eyes and asked in a low voice. Xian Kong stared into Xiao Hua's eyes and probed, "Immortal friend, have you thought of letting Basha participate in another battle?" "Why?" Xiao Hua asked curiously. Ai's disciple has already participated in the last battle. His agreement with the North Sea Dragon Palace has ended. Immortal friend, you should remove the warrior slave seal for Ai's disciple and return his freedom. Hee, this old man didn't say that he wouldn't remove the warrior slave seal for Basha. This old man just wants to suggest that immortal friend let him participate in another battle. Could it be that immortal friend didn't see it? Until now, no immortal friend has participated in the battle. If Basha's disciple can participate, he'll definitely earn a lot of sea crystals. No. Xiao Hua shook his head and said, "My disciple has already been injured in the previous battle. If he participates in another battle, won't he die here?" "Immortal friend, don't you think you can earn more sea crystals if you participate in another battle?" Xian Kong asked with a smile. No. I still have to rely on this disciple to earn more origin stones in the future." Xiao Hua waved his hand and objected. Xian Kong's expression changed, and he said coldly, "Actually, this old man doesn't want to fall out with immortal friend. I want to discuss this properly. However, since immortal friend refuses a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, this old man will just tell you directly." "Tell me what?" Xiao Hua said coldly. -13. Chapter 39-36. Basha 4, 7, 8, 8, 6, 9 was previously recorded as a Class 4 demon beast, but his strength has now reached Class 5. Previously, when he participated in the battle as a Class 4 demon beast, it caused unfairness in my Yazi Gladiator Arena. Not only did the spectators have complaints about my Yazi Gladiator Arena, but even my master felt that it was inappropriate. Therefore, this old man has already told Basha 4, 7, 8, 6, 9 that he must participate in another battle between Class 5 demon beasts before he can leave the gladiator arena. "Fellow immortal Xian," Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This is your Yazi gladiator arena going back on its word." Xian Kong shrugged his shoulder that was exposed outside the tortoise shell and said, "It's not going back on my word. It's just that you didn't clearly state Basha 4, 7, 8, 6, 9's true strength." "What did my foolish disciple say?" Xiao Hua understood that with Xian Kong's eloquence, he must have deceived and coaxed Yuanya like before. Yuanya, in order not to implicate Xiao Hua, would definitely agree. Sure enough, Xian Kong smiled and said, "Basha 4, 7, 8, 6, 9 has already agreed. In fact, this old man didn't need to inform you. However, this old man feels that since you're Basha 4, 8, 8, 6, 9's master, this old man should inform you." "That's good." Xiao Hua thought for a moment and said, "But before the battle, you have to remove the 10,000 kill order and my disciple's slave warrior seal." Xian Kong thought for a moment and shook his head slightly. "This old man can't promise you. All demon beasts can only remove the slave warrior seal when they leave the gladiator arena." "Don't worry," Xiao Hua said again. "This is the first condition. I have a second condition." Xian Kong didn't find it strange at all. He seemed to have expected Xiao Hua to say this. He just shook his head slightly and said, "Fellow immortal, sometimes it's better not to be too greedy." "This?" Xiao Hua hesitated slightly. His eyes turned slightly and he said with a smile, "Since fellow immortal Xian Kong said so, then, can I take 20% more of the bet?" 20% is impossible." Xian Kong shook his head. "But seeing that there are some misunderstandings between us, my Yazi Gladiator Arena can give you 5% of the bet." 5%? That's too little." Xiao Hua pretended to hesitate. His real purpose was to let Xian Kong remove Yuan Ye's warrior slave seal first. When he saw that Xiao Hua was unwilling, Xian Kong waved his hand and said, "How about this? Both of us will take a step back. This old man agrees to remove the 10,000 kill command right now, and at the same time, I'll remove Basya's 4, 7, 8, 8, 6, and 9 warrior slave seals. You only have to take 5% more. How about it?" "All right." Xiao Hua seemed to be in pain as he helplessly nodded. Xian Kong said with a smile, "That's the right decision, fellow immortal. Isn't there a saying in the human race that goes a wise man submits to circumstances? That way, it'll be easier for both of us. Call my disciple over." Xiao Hua couldn't sense the aura of the green-robed Xiao Hua, so he urged Xian Kong. "Sure." Xian Kong turned around, and with a wave of his finger, Yuanya appeared in the distance. Meanwhile, Xiao Hua also appeared in Xiao Hua's senses. In an instant, Xiao Hua understood Xiao Hua's intentions, and he returned to the arena. "Yeah," Xiao Hua said. "You've already agreed?" "Yes, Master." Yuanya replied. "Disciple doesn't want to implicate Master. It's just a battle, so Disciple will return in a moment." "All right." Xiao Hua nodded. "Since you've already decided, Master can't say anything else. Go ahead and attack. There's no need to hold back." Disciple understands. Yuanya seemed to understand but didn't. "Before the battle, let fellow immortal Xian remove your warrior slave seal first." Xiao Hua said. "All right." Yuanya took a step forward and replied. Xian Kong waved the warrior slave seal, and the Yazi on the warrior slave seal spat out a stream of blood energy. The images of Xiao Hua and Yuanya in the bronze mirror slowly disappeared. Then, Xian Kong opened his mouth again, and a mouthful of demonic energy landed on the warrior slave seal. The warrior slave seal emitted a dazzling brilliance, and it rushed into the air and transformed into a Yazi. Xian Kong calmly took out a thumb-sized dragon seal from his bosom, and with a flick of his finger, the dragon seal landed in the Yazi's mouth. Pooh! The Yazi spat out a cluster of bloodlight that landed on Yuanya, and then the entire bloodlight was sucked back into the Yazi's mouth. Buzz buzz! The Yazi's body trembled, and the ferocious beast's mouth spat out a ferocious blood demon head. This demon head spun in the air for a moment, and then it slowly shrank, transforming into a drop of blood that landed in front of Yuanya. Xiao Hua raised his hand, and the drop of blood landed in his hand. Xiao Hua carefully looked at it, and then he said with a smile, "Very good. Disciple, you can go now." "Yes, Master." Yuanya turned around without hesitation and walked towards the entrance of the cave. This old man congratulates fellow immortal on returning with a fruitful journey. Xian Kong looked at Xiao Hua and cupped his hands with a fake smile. "Haha, I definitely will. Many thanks to fellow immortal Xian for giving I this opportunity." Xiao Hua turned around and walked towards the arena. The true Samadhi fire in his hand flashed, and the drop of blood was burned into a wisp of smoke. Looking at Xiao Hua's back as he walked into the arena, Xian Kong smiled coldly. He had been in charge of the Yazi auction house for who knows how many years, and he had seen countless humans and monsters. How could he not know the reason why Xiao Jian took Yuanya away from the Basha arena that day? When Xiao Hua returned to the arena, everything in front of him made him have mixed feelings. Because the one in the arena at this moment was still Jiang Sheng. The one fighting against him was a killer whale. This killer whale was huge, and it had the head of a tiger and the body of a whale. It was incomparably ferocious, and it was much more powerful than the fire lion from before. When Xiao Hua sat down on the chair, Jiang Sheng had already been smashed onto a rock by the huge whale. Although it was not to the extent that his flesh was smashed and his bones broken. Looking at the blood gushing out from the corner of Jiang Sheng's mouth, Xiao Hua knew that Jiang Sheng was seriously injured. Roar! Just as Xiao Hua was biting his lips, Jiang Sheng let out an angry roar. His entire body flashed with a golden luster, and his body that was only 3 feet tall abruptly grew in size. However, he only grew to about 10 feet before stopping. At this moment, Jiang Sheng was no longer in his human form, but in the form of a small dragon covered in scales. Jiang Sheng, who had transformed into a dragon, roared and pounced towards the killer whale. His claws and fists continuously hit the killer whale's head, and in a moment, the killer whale was stunned. Then, Jiang Sheng's claws really pierced into the killer whale's cheeks, and with the strength of his arms, the entire killer whale was lifted up from the ground by Jiang Sheng. "Go to hell," Jiang Sheng shouted. The huge killer whale flew out from his hand with a woo and rushed towards the arena's wall. Pung! A loud sound rang out, and the entire arena shook. "Damn it! How can this shorty have so much strength?" All the demons were extremely shocked. After all, demons were known for their physical bodies, but Jiang Sheng's strength still exceeded their imagination. Swoosh! Without waiting for Jiang Sheng to make another move, Ma Yingfeng, who was standing on the blood cloud, already used a cage to imprison Jiang Sheng and sent him into the cave. "No, no," another demon shouted. "How can this dragon man be so powerful? Your Yazi Arena's actions are too unfair. He clearly has the strength of a level 9 fighting beast, but you insist on treating him as a level 5. Hee hee, how can there be absolute fairness in this world? How can there be absolute certainty in this world?" Ma Yingfeng sneered and said, "If I let you all see it accurately, wouldn't this old man have to drink the northwest wind?" Ma Yingfeng was naturally not as tactful as Xian Kong, and these words made all the demons unhappy. The entire gladiator arena was in an uproar. At this moment, Xian Kong hurriedly revealed himself in midair and said with a smile, "Fellow immortals, General Ma Yingfeng is actually right. Think about it. Everything in this world can be seen clearly. So how can there be love and hatred? How can this little dragon man from Heavenly Abode River betray us and assassinate the general of our North Sea Dragon Palace? It's because the matters in this world are not controlled by us demons, so there are many interesting things in this world. However, since fellow immortals have come to my Yazi Arena to watch the fights, then I will try my best to arrange everything in a fair manner." Xian Kong looked around, and everywhere he looked, the noise was reduced. Xian Kong was very satisfied and said, for example, that Basha from before, fellow immortals all feel that he might have the strength of a level 5 fighting beast. So this old man has already discussed with him, and let him fight another round to satisfy fellow immortals. Good. The demons all cheered loudly. This is true fairness. Fellow immortal Xian has done well. Of course, there's also that remaining evil from Heavenly Abode River. Fellow immortals all feel that he is quite strong. So this old man will let him fight another round to satisfy fellow immortals. Good. The demons didn't expect Xian Kong's words to be the same as not saying anything, but they also felt that this was very fair, so they all cheered loudly. Xian Kong smiled faintly. "Since that's the case, fellow immortals, please prepare yourselves. The next fight will begin immediately." With that, Xian Kong's figure disappeared, and Ma Yingfeng stood on the blood cloud with a puzzled expression. A moment later, a swordfish swam over from the distance and landed in front of Ma Yingfeng. Ma Yingfeng reached out with his hand, and the swordfish turned into a wave and disappeared from his hand. Ma Yingfeng frowned, but he soon relaxed, and a thoughtful look flashed in his eyes. Dong, dong, dong. Several drumbeats sounded, and the entire arena flashed with a layer of blood-red light. 2 holes appeared on the stone wall as usual, but when the holes appeared, there was no beast roar coming from inside. When the 2 cages flew out, the demons were stunned, and even Xiao Hua was stunned on the spot. The 2 cages weren't big, and the one on the left was even smaller. Inside it was Jiang Sheng, who had just left the arena. However, at this moment, Jiang Sheng had already returned to his original size. Furthermore, he was holding a halberd in his hand. In particular, Jiang Sheng's eyes were extremely bright and blood-red. He didn't care that he was covered in blood, and he coldly stared at Ma Yingfeng on the blood cloud. As for the other cage, it was Yuanya who was wearing a Taoist robe. At this moment, Yuanya was just like Yuanya who had entered the side door. He had a Chinkuan bag on him, and he held a pair of demonic hammers in his hands. -13. Chapter 39-37. Xiao Hua was dumbstruck as he looked at the man and beast. He had never expected the Yazi Gladiator Arena to have such a plan. They actually wanted Yuanya to fight Jiang Sheng. Moreover, he had even returned Jiang Sheng and Yuanya's weapons to them and released their cultivation that had been sealed. This, this was a life and death battle. In this battle, either Yuan Ye or Jiang Sheng would die. Based on Xiao Hua's understanding of the man and beast, the possibility of Yuan Ye dying was higher. Of course, Jiang Sheng had already fought 2 battles in a row and was on the verge of exhaustion. Yuan Ye might not die in Jiang Sheng's hands. But the problem was, what if Yuan Ye killed Jiang Sheng? How would Yuan Ye face the water tribe of the Paradise River? How would Yuan Ye face Dragon Lady Jiang Hong? How would Yuan Ye explain to Lu Yi? Of course, it was still too early to consider the matter between Lu Yi and Jiang Hong. However, Xiao Hua knew that as long as Yuan Ye fought with Jiang Sheng, his fortune gate and the Paradise River would develop karma that he didn't want to see. The crowd of demon race was equally shocked when they saw a human and a demon come out. These 2 gladiator beasts were also very powerful. Although it seemed that Yuan Ye was slightly weaker, it was just as Xiao Hua thought. At this time, the strength of the 2 gladiator beasts was really comparable. All the demon race could not make a decision arbitrarily. Damn it, Xin Kong, you're too cunning. A demonic beast expert howled. What choice do you want me to make? Haha. Xin Kong's laughter resounded from a corner of the arena. Fellow immortals, weren't you complaining about the unfairness? This old man has now placed fairness in front of you. Why are you complaining about this old man? Everyone, hurry up and place your bets. The exciting battle is about to begin. This old man can't wait to see if the human race is stronger or the demonic beast race is stronger. Xiao Hua narrowed his eyes and coldly looked at the arena. Looking at the beasts who were placing their bets in a mess, a cold light flashed in his eyes, dong dong. Along with the beating of the war drums, Ma Yingfeng waved his hand and opened Yuan Ye's and Jiang Sheng's cages. As soon as the man and the beast rushed out of the cages, they immediately activated their flying techniques and rushed towards each other. Seeing that a tragedy was about to happen, a thunderous roar came from the arena. Ma Yingfeng, hand over your life. As this voice spread out, a ray of sword light that was as bright as thunder appeared. The moment this sword light appeared, there was no other light in the arena. All the demons and humans closed their eyes under this sword light. Within the dazzling sword light, the sword chi that could kill all living things instantly filled the entire arena. Most of the demon race members were so frightened that they trembled all over. As for the few demon race experts who were sitting high up, their demon chi naturally surged as they tried their best to protect their bodies from this unparalleled sword chi. Swoosh! The sword light flashed and landed on the demon array in the center of the arena. Thousands of demon runes scurried around like frightened tadpoles, but at the same time, all the demon runes were neatly cut in half by the sword light. What was special was that the sword chi didn't have much energy left after cutting through the demon runes. It continued to fly towards Ma Yingfeng, who was standing on the blood cloud. At this moment, Ma Yingfeng was the same as all the other demon race members. His eyes were blinded by the sword chi, and his eyes were slightly closed. Just as he released his origin sense, the sword chi had already landed on his head. How is this possible? When did I offend such a powerful opponent? Hearing this, Ma Yingfeng lost all his courage. Under the shroud of the sword energy, the sword intent of the flying sword was like the heavens pressing down. Not to mention Ma Yingfeng's monster body, even a giant mountain peak would be split in half by this sword intent. Ma Yingfeng's demon body violently trembled under this sword chi. He was extremely shocked and couldn't help but cry out, "General Ao, don't move." Seeing that the sword chi was about to fall, Ma Yingfeng had nowhere to hide. Suddenly, an extremely long crutch stretched out from the stone wall, and Xin Kong's voice came. Dong! With a light sound, Ma Yingfeng was sent flying by the crutch. Boom! The flying sword fell. Not only was Xin Kong's crutch cut in half, but the ground of the entire arena, including the giant rocks and spikes, were also split by the flying sword. A sword mark of more than 100 feet appeared in an instant. Disciple, don't move. It's master. Yuan Ye's figure was naturally sent flying by the sword chi. Just as he was surprised, Xiao Hua's voice sounded. Yuan Ye immediately calmed down. Then, his body tightened. When he opened his eyes again, his figure was already inside the Kunlun immortal realm. This shocking sword was naturally done by the Confucian cultivator Xiaohua. This was also the first time Xiaohua used it after his sword Dao reached the Desheng level. He didn't expect the power to be so terrifying. After putting away Yuanya, Xiaohua's heart moved, and his mind wrapped around Jiang Sheng. Although Jiang Sheng was forced back by the sword qi, he stubbornly urged his demonic aura with all his strength. His demonic body once again expanded, wanting to block the sword light. Xiaohua's mind was naturally firmly blocked by Jiang Sheng. Xiaohua hurriedly used the monster language to whisper, "Jiang Sheng, this old man is an old friend of Jiang Che and Jiang Peng. At the same time, I also know Jiang Hong. They asked me to save you." As soon as he heard Xiaohua say so many names, Jiang Sheng immediately stopped resisting. However, he was still somewhat hesitant and struggling. After all, he already felt the strange force around him. He knew that as long as he fell into it, he would have no power to struggle. Everything would be handed over to this person. Damn it! Seeing that Jiang Sheng was still moving, Xiaohua was anxious. If you want to die, this old man will leave now. Jiang Sheng was helpless and could only stop struggling. Then, he felt his body fly up. Then, he saw light and shadow flash. He was actually in a celestial mountain, and in front of him was the human who had just appeared in the arena like him. Jiang Sheng was greatly alarmed. He wanted to move again, yet he couldn't. No matter how much strength he used to struggle, he couldn't even budge an inch. However, Yuanya glanced at him indifferently and didn't pay attention to him at all. He walked towards a place on the mountain peak. Where is this? Jiang Sheng was slightly relieved in his heart, yet a cloud of doubt arose. It was also the moment Jiang Sheng resisted that several powerful origin senses swept past from all around the arena and descended onto Xiaohua. Clouds and rosy clouds surged around Xiaohua's body, and he shouted loudly, "This is a personal grudge between this old man and Yuan Jinfeng. It has nothing to do with fellow immortals." As he spoke, Xiaohua raised his hand again. Several sword lights condensed in his hand, and he shouted loudly, "Vile creature! When this old man saw that you were injured earlier, I pitied you in my heart and saved you. Then, I placed you in this old man's home. However, you actually took advantage of the time when this old man left home to swallow my chick and copulate with the female pufferfish I raised. The most infuriating thing is that you actually abandoned a group of pufferfish that were crying piteously for food and fled. If this old man doesn't take your life today, how can I face the female pufferfish that died under the butcher's knife?" As he spoke, the murderous sword light from before appeared once more. Even though the demon race experts weren't afraid of Xiaohua's divine ability, when they heard that it was a personal grudge between Xiaohua and Yuan Jinfeng, and they heard Xiaohua speak clearly about the chick and the female pufferfish, they acted like they were serious and hurriedly withdrew their origin senses and hid at the side. However, Xin Kong and Yuan Jinfeng were puzzled when these words entered their ears. Xin Kong looked at Yuan Jinfeng with surprise, but when his gaze descended onto Yuan Jinfeng's dazed face, he suddenly came to an understanding and recalled what the chick and female pufferfish Xiaohua spoke of were in the eyes of humans. At the same time that Xin Kong thought of this, Yuan Jinfeng naturally came to an understanding as well, and his face instantly turned extremely livid. Wait! At the same time that Xin Kong recovered from his shock, he hurriedly looked towards the other areas of the arena, and Yuanya and Jiang Sheng had vanished a long time ago. He's... Xin Kong hurriedly released his origin sense, but unfortunately, before he could see Xiaohua's face, another brilliant sword light appeared. Xin Kong was greatly shocked and hurriedly cried out, "Second Prince." Actually, there was utterly no need for Xin Kong to shout. At the same time that the sword light appeared, a strand of origin sense swept out from the arena, and a proud and furious voice drifted through the entire arena. "Who dares to cause trouble in this king's arena?" However, this voice was still too late. The sword light shot into the sky, and a wave of rumbling resounded. The demon formation at the entrance that everyone had entered through was slashed apart by the sword light, and the group of demon runes were split into two. Along with a wisp of starlight and the smell of the ocean that poured into the arena, Xiao Hua's figure transformed into a strand of watery light that vanished at the flaw of the demon formation. At the same time that Xiao Hua's figure swayed, the experts of the demon race that sat high above in the distance had recovered from their shock as well. They practically swung their arms at the exact same time, and their claws tore through space and instantly descended towards the spot where Xiao Hua stood just a moment ago. Unfortunately, only strands of water vapor drifted through the air, and they weren't even able to capture a single strand of Xiao Hua's hair. Damn it! The experts of the demon race were slightly embarrassed and furious. It wasn't just because Xiao Hua had fled right before their eyes, but because Xiao Hua was a human while they were demons. When had the human race ever acted so arrogantly before the demon race? Xiao Hua's escape wasn't just Xiao Hua's problem. It was the human race's provocation towards the demon race. Woo! Strands of demon aura soared into the sky as the figures of several great demons expanded, preparing to chase after Xiao Hua. At this moment, a huge dragon flew out from the arena. On that ferocious dragon head, a pair of protruding dragon eyes were spewing out sparks, and the dragon's roaming body emitted an aura that caused the demons to feel dizzy. Seeing the huge dragon flying over, the few great demons didn't dare to snatch and hastily dodged. However, with a loud bang, the huge dragon crashed into the fissure that Xiao Hua had just escaped from, creating a hole that was tens of meters in size. In the blink of an eye, the huge dragon had already disappeared by riding on clouds. Chase. As soon as the huge dragon left, the few great demons couldn't bear it any longer. They released their Yuan Shun and rode on demon clouds to chase after the dragon. There was a deathly silence in the arena. For a moment, the entire arena was even more heated than before. After the demonic array of the arena was split open by Xiao Hua and the gate was broken by the dragon, the demonic array of the entire arena was completely destroyed. All the demonic beasts flew up from their seats and rushed towards the huge gap. While flying, the demonic beasts shouted, "Interesting, interesting." -13. Chapter 39-38. Haha, there's actually a human who dares to cause trouble in the North Sea Dragon Palace's arena. He must be tired of living. No, that's not right. It's because Ma Yingfeng offended this human. Didn't you hear? He had an affair with his female porpoise and even abandoned it. But then again, what is this female porpoise? Why haven't I heard of it? Is it an extremely powerful demonic beast or an extremely charming demonic beast? Who knows? It's probably a rare demonic beast. Otherwise, why would he chase him all the way to the arena? He even dares to offend the second prince of the North Sea Dragon Palace? It should be. This human's sword technique is so high. His demonic beast must be extremely rare too. According to the humans, Ma Yingfeng must have eaten a bear's heart and leopard's guts. In the distance, Ma Yingfeng, who had just flown up from the ground, was about to say something to Xian Kong. When he heard the discussion, his face became even more ashen. He opened his mouth, wanting to argue, but he didn't know what to say. As for Xian Kong, he couldn't hide the smile on his face. However, when he saw all the demonic beasts flying out of the hole, he immediately thought of something and hurriedly called out, "Fellow immortals." However, Xian Kong only said these two words before he shut his mouth dejectedly. If these demonic beasts didn't leave, Xian Kong could easily find out who left the arena. There weren't many humans in the Yazi arena. If he investigated carefully, he would be able to find out who gave the auction hall's certificate to Xiao Hua. Although there were portraits of Xiao Jin and Yuan Ye in the North Sea Dragon Palace's battle strategy, as well as Yuan Ye's record in the Basha arena, these weren't enough for Xian Kong to find the power behind Xiao Hua. Now, both the demonic beasts and humans had left. How could Xian Kong find out? However, the huge hole in the arena was personally opened by the second prince of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Xian Kong really wanted to cry but had no tears. A group of demonic beasts chased out of the arena. When they saw the second prince of the Dragon Palace flying towards the North Sea, they were all surprised. After all, the troublemaker could fly anywhere, but why did he fly to the North Sea? The North Sea was the lair of the second prince of the North Sea Dragon Palace. There was no way he could escape from the second prince. Don't tell me. Something must be wrong if something was amiss. The demons thought quickly and seemed to have thought of something. Hence, numerous strands of primordial consciousness swept out. However, when their primordial consciousness swept past the second prince, it continued forward, forward, and forward. There was only the boundless sea in front of them. Where was that wretched-looking human? Roar! Just as the demons were wondering what was going on, the second prince raised his head and roared. His dragon body shrunk by half, and he dove into the North Sea. How is that possible? That human actually dove into the water? Could it be that he thinks he can hide from the dragons in the water? Although the demons were wary of the dragon clan, they were not afraid of them. After pondering for a moment, they urged the demon cloud to increase their flying speed. They either dove into the sea to chase after the dragon clan or chased above the sea surface. However, in the time it took to brew a cup of tea, buzz buzz, the continuous sound of tsunamis came from the sea. Then, a huge wave rushed out from the sea. The second prince's huge dragon body soared into the sky. Roar, roar. The dragon's roar resounded for thousands of miles. The layers of dark clouds in the sky were torn apart by the dragon's roar, and rays of sunlight shone through the clouds. No way. The demons chasing after the second prince were shocked. Could it be that the human actually escaped the second prince's primordial consciousness? That human is actually the literary sage of Confucianism? The second prince of the dragon palace rushed into the sky. The huge dragon body shrunk rapidly and gradually transformed into a human form. The second prince was wearing a golden chainmail and a purple gold crown on his head. Above the ferocious dragon head, a pair of huge dragon eyes were bloodshot. Roar! The second prince of the dragon palace turned around. His eyes were like lightning. He opened his mouth and roared to the surroundings. Within 100 miles, the winds and clouds were swirling. Several experts of the demon clan hurriedly dodged. Pa pa pa. A series of explosions came from the surface of the experts of the demon clan. Within 100 miles, whether it was in the air or at the bottom of the sea, countless explosions came one after another. It was more intense than pouring cold water into a pot of oil. While the experts of the demon clan were dodging, their hearts were as clear as a mirror. The second prince of the dragon palace must have lost the human, and he must have lost him long ago. Otherwise, the dragon's roar would have made him appear within 100 miles. Just as the demons were thinking, a blurry human figure suddenly appeared 100 miles away. However, it was like a mirage, disappearing in a flash. Damn it! The second prince of the dragon palace had already noticed it. He did not have time to transform into a dragon and chased after Xiao Hua again. Hee hee. The dragon palace really has a lot of secret skills. In the distance, Xiao Hua used the water escape technique to escape. At the same time, he used the secret skill of the heavenly abode river to cover his breath. That day, Jiang Che of the heavenly abode river hid beside Ao Zhan with this secret skill and was not discovered by Ao Zhan. Xiao Hua was so far away from the second prince of the dragon palace. How could he be discovered? Moreover, among all the skills that Xiao Hua had learned, there was only one divine sense that surpassed the second prince of the dragon palace. It must be the Taoist escape technique. Therefore, the water escape technique that Xiao Hua used was not inferior to the second prince of the dragon palace. If the second prince had not suddenly stopped and turned around to use the secret skill of the dragon clan, Xiao Hua's diversion tactic would have succeeded. However, even if Xiao Hua was temporarily discovered by the second prince of the dragon palace, Xiao Hua was not afraid at all. The fluctuation of his soul awareness flowed like water waves, washing away the primordial thoughts of the second prince of the dragon palace and other experts of the demon clan. His figure quickly rushed to Yuling Bay. Damn it! Damn it! Damn it! The second prince of the dragon palace cursed angrily. He used the secret skill of the dragon clan one by one, trying to distinguish Xiao Hua's trace. However, Xiao Hua was like a slippery loach. It seemed that he was there, but no matter where his primordial thoughts or secret skills fell, they were all empty. Seeing that Yuling Bay was not far away, the second prince of the dragon palace had a bad feeling. After all, the human clan and the demon clan were mixed in Yuling Bay. Although there were not many human clan members, to search one by one was like looking for a needle in a haystack. Not to mention a practitioner like Xiao Hua. As long as he relaxed for a moment, his trace would have been thousands of miles away. It was impossible to find him. Just as the second prince of the Dragon Palace had a bad feeling, the primordial thoughts in the distance immediately became abnormal. Previously, he could still feel a trace of Xiao Hua, but now it was empty. There was no perception, just like before when he lost track of Xiao Hua. At this moment, the second prince of the Dragon Palace suddenly realized that it was not he who had been chasing Xiao Hua, but Xiao Hua who had been leading him by the nose. Xiao Hua could escape his detection at any time. When the second prince of the Dragon Palace realized this, a golden light flashed between his eyes. A stream of dragon chi rose from the golden light. The second prince of the Dragon Palace gave up on the direction of Yuling Bay and swept to the left and right sea. However, when he hurriedly looked around, there was a sudden dragon roar, and the nearby space boiled again. However, it was a pity that the bubbles disappeared one after another without revealing the slightest trace of abnormality. Roar! The second prince of the Dragon Palace was furious. He suddenly waved his dragon tail behind him, turning it into a huge iron rod, and hit the sea. Boom! The sea was pushed forward by him, and huge waves of hundreds of feet high. Several nearby ships were tottering in the waves. A group of demon clan members on the ships were so frightened by the second prince's dragon chi that they collapsed on the deck and trembled. After the second prince vented his anger, he sped up and rushed to Yuling Bay not far away. His gaze swept to the place where Xiao Hua might have fallen. The second prince's figure was like lightning. Just as he was about to rush into Yuling Bay, he suddenly stopped and turned to look at the place where he flew past. It was one of the 5 mountain ranges of Yuling Bay that looked like 5 fingers reaching into the North Sea. At the end of the mountain range, there was a protruding cliff. Usually, hundreds of seagulls would soar and rest here. However, at this time, there was not a single seagull to be seen. Except for the whistling of the sea wind, it was terrifyingly quiet. The second prince frowned slightly. He looked at Yuling Bay not far away in the morning light, and hesitated for a moment before flying toward the cliff. After the second prince, the 3 demon race cultivators flew over separately. However, they didn't get too close. They just stood in 3 different directions of the cliff, blocking the way to the North Sea. It was as if they were preventing anyone from escaping from the cliff. At the same time, in the direction of Yuling Bay, squads of armored prawn soldiers and crab generals also flew over, gradually blocking the other direction of the cliff. The top of the cliff was very barren. Only a few thumb-sized plants grew tenaciously in the sea breeze. These plants grew out from the cracks of the large rocks. Apart from the dark green rust spots on the large rocks, there were also patches of grayish-white bird droppings. There was simply too much bird droppings, layer upon layer. The outermost layer of bird droppings was slowly lifted by the whistling sea wind, blown away by the wind. Among the rocks, there was a small stone house. This stone house was completely built from the rocks on the cliff. Although it was not piled up perfectly, it was enough to block the sea wind. However, the second prince's gaze did not linger on this stone house for long. He only glanced at it before sweeping past, landing on the cliff that was sheltered from the wind. However, at this moment, a black shadow suddenly flashed from the stone house. A woman with dark skin walked out from inside. This woman had a graceful figure. When she walked, her waist swayed like a willow tree, as if she had no bones. Although this woman was wearing clothes, the skin exposed outside of her clothes was clearly covered in scales. What was special was that although the woman's rough face had been transformed to the best of her ability, her scarlet tongue was still in the shape of a snake's forked tongue, involuntarily flicking here and there. There was almost no emotion in those pitch-black eyes. Wasn't this woman the snake demon that Xiao Hua had seen in the sky above Yuling Bay last night? -13. Chapter 39:39. Looking at the woman who had just walked out of the stone house, she immediately felt that something was wrong. She looked at the second prince, and the expression on her face changed drastically. She stood there in a daze, and her entire body trembled like a sieve. She almost fell to the ground. The snake species' natural submission to the dragon clan was involuntarily revealed. Wife. A weak voice sounded from inside the stone house. He seemed to have noticed the abnormality and hurriedly asked, "What happened to you?" "Nothing, nothing. Husband, you must not come out." The woman's voice was a bit shrill and even had a hissing sound. However, in the midst of the woman's voice, there was a slightly dragging sound of footsteps. A man in strange clothes walked out of the stone house. This man had a head full of white hair and two big and lifeless eyes. His hands were stretched out in front of him, groping left and right. Obviously, he was blind. When the man touched the snake demon's trembling body, he said in surprise, "Wife, why are you so cold? Quickly put on these clothes." As he spoke, the blind man hurriedly took off his clothes and touched the woman, wanting to help her put on her clothes. "No need, husband." Facing the second prince of the Dragon Palace, the woman could not restrain her body from trembling. However, she still hurriedly shouted, "The wind is strong here. You quickly put on your clothes." "Humph." The second prince of the Dragon Palace snorted and looked at the woman and the demon with extreme disgust. The dragon breath from his mouth and nose blew past, creating a fierce wind that blew away the clothes in the man's hands. Such a strong wind. The old man said and hurriedly pulled the woman's arm. "Wife, quickly come back to hide from the wind." The snake demon did not dare to move. She hurriedly pushed the man and said, "Husband, don't worry about me. Quickly go back. Damn thing. You actually dare to conspire with a human?" The shrimp soldiers and crab soldiers in the distance had already approached. When Ma Yingfeng saw this, he unconsciously thought of Xiao Hua's slander in the arena and his heart burned with anger. He waved the trident in his hand and stabbed it towards the trembling snake spirit woman. The woman was shocked and wanted to dodge. However, when she saw the man still holding her arm, she gritted her teeth and tilted her body to block the man. Her body met the trident head-on. "Are you crazy?" At this moment, a lazy voice came from the place where the second prince of Dragon Palace was looking. "They are a loving couple. I envy them. Why do you want to break them apart? If you break them up, then I won't even have a neighbor." Following this voice, a huge black shadow rushed out from that place and blocked the three-pronged fork. When Ma Yingfeng saw that the three-pronged fork had wings that seemed to be cast from copper and iron, he couldn't help but be greatly alarmed. "Fellow immortal, where did you come from?" The second prince of Dragon Palace was not surprised. He looked at the origin of the wings with interest and asked, "When will we arrive at Yuling Bay? Why didn't I know that there was a powerful demon race expert on this cliff?" "Haha, this old man came from where he came from, and in the future, I will return to the same place. I just stayed in Yuling Bay for a few years. I don't need to disturb so many fellow immortals, right?" As he spoke, a demon race of more than 30 meters flew out from the foot of the mountain. This demon race was now in human form. On his head, which was several feet in size, there was a pair of bright eyes flashing with a sharp gaze. Two long eyebrows were slanted into his sideburns like sharp swords. His slightly bulging mouth and nose revealed faint red lips and white teeth. The demon's wings were surging with demon aura, and a pair of naked arms with bulging muscles could be vaguely seen amidst the demon aura. What was blocking the sharp weapons was the shadow of one of the demon's wings. "I'm Ao Jing, the second prince of North Sea Dragon Palace." The second prince pondered for a moment and cupped his hands. "How should I address you, fellow immortal?" "Oh, it's the second prince." The demon race suddenly realized and laughed. "I'm Feng Wu. As for where I come from, haha, it's just an unknown place in the Thousand Demons Sacred Realm. It's not comparable to the North Sea Dragon Palace. Let's not talk about it." "So it's fellow immortal Feng Wu." Ao Jing laughed. "I wonder if I'm lucky enough to invite fellow immortal to Yuling Palace for a chat?" I'm not going. Feng Wu flapped his wings and said, "If I wanted to go, I would have gone a few years ago. Since I'm not going, I can only disappoint the second prince." "Fine. Since fellow immortal doesn't like to be disturbed, I won't mention this matter." Facing Feng Wu, an unfamiliar demon, Ao Jing acutely sensed that this demon of the phoenix bloodline was exceptionally powerful. He couldn't help but restrain his arrogance as he smiled and said, "However, this king would like to ask you, did you sense a human cultivator who concealed himself and passed by here just now?" "Hee, second prince really overestimates my strength." Fengwu laughed. "How can I see a human race cultivator that even second prince can't catch up with? Oomph, damn human race." At the mention of Xiao Hua, an inexplicable anger appeared on Ao Jing's face. He turned his head to look at the snake spirit and the old man in the stone house and said sternly, "Evil creature, what's the matter with you? If you don't explain clearly, I'll take your life right now." "Second prince, please spare my life." The snake spirit almost fell to the ground and said anxiously, "Su Lang is this lowly concubine's savior. This lowly concubine doesn't know how to repay him, so I want to accompany him for the rest of my life." "Lowly concubine. You're really good at saying the word human race." Ao Jing laughed sinisterly. "This man is just weak. How can he save you? Aren't you deceiving me? I'll let second prince know." The snake spirit didn't dare to be negligent and hurriedly said, "When Su Lang was young, this lowly concubine was chased by an enemy and turned into a small snake. It was winter at that time. This lowly concubine was frozen into a popsicle and was about to freeze to death. Su Lang just happened to come back from the academy and happened to meet this lowly concubine. He was careful and kind. When he saw that this lowly concubine was frozen by the winter snow, he hid this lowly concubine in his arms. After a night of warmth, this lowly concubine finally woke up. This lowly concubine didn't dare to stay in Su Lang's house for long and hurriedly flew underground to hibernate. When this lowly concubine recovered the next year, this lowly concubine went to find Su Lang to repay his kindness. However, when this lowly concubine found Su Lang, this lowly concubine found out that because this lowly concubine didn't know how to restrain the poison in her body when she was seriously injured, Su Lang was poisoned by this lowly concubine when he saved this lowly concubine. Although this lowly concubine was saved by the human race's physician, Su Lang was still blind. This lowly concubine felt that there was nothing this lowly concubine could do to repay him, so I pretended to be a wandering village woman and married into the Su family, pledging my life to you. When Su Lang grew old and no longer had anything to worry about at home, this lowly concubine brought Su Lang out to fulfill his long-cherished wish of traveling 10,000 li instead of reading 10,000 books. When I arrived at the Northern Sea, Su Lang was already old and couldn't walk anymore. Therefore, this lowly concubine built a house here and accompanied him on his last journey." "Wife, what are you talking about?" The man in the house was very puzzled when he heard the crooked demon language outside the house. However, he was also familiar with the woman's voice and couldn't help but ask in surprise, "Who is outside? We've been here for so long, but we've never had any neighbors come to visit. Could it be that it's our neighbors?" "Jiji." Shi Jinfeng sneered and changed the demon language in the air into human language. He mocked, "Wife, do you know what your wife is? She's just a snake spirit. Do you know where you live? This is a cliff that goes deep into the Northern Sea. In the past, there were many seabirds here, but now, not a single seabird can be seen. Do you know where these seabirds went? They were all swallowed by your snake spirit wife. Where did you get this neighborhood from?" Hearing Ao Jing's words, the house was silent at first. In the end, that man cried out in shock, Wife, who is this person? Is what he said true? Aren't you an orphan of the Bai family? How did you become a snake spirit? How is this possible?" "Husband." A trace of sorrow appeared in the woman's previously emotionless eyes. This sorrow was especially obvious in the pitch-black snake eyes. Fengwu frowned and glared at Shi Jinfeng with some displeasure. Shi Jinfeng's heart shrank as fear appeared in his heart. At this moment, he finally understood why his prince was so courteous to this demon with a phoenix body. It wasn't just because Fengwu was powerful. "My wife, say something. I don't believe what this person said." That man pressed, Are you a human or a demon?" The snake spirit woman hesitated for a moment and said, "Husband, is it important whether this lowly concubine is a human or a demon?" Unfortunately, that old man with the surname Su didn't answer. After a moment, the snake spirit woman said with some sorrow, "Husband, do you still remember the story of the little snake that this concubine often told you?" "Of course I remember." That man's voice trembled. You often told this story to me. I thought you were comforting me. Could it be?" The man's voice was somewhat fearful. "Wife was also replaced with you." The woman straightened her waist with difficulty and turned her head to look sadly at the stone house. She had accompanied this man for dozens of years. Although she was a demon, she understood the man's thoughts from the change in his tone. "Damn it, this is ridiculous." Ao Jing couldn't help but ridicule. "You've shared a bed for dozens of years, and you don't even know what your wife is. Have you spent your nights like this for dozens of years?" Hearing Ao Jing's words, Shi Jinfeng smiled and said, "This muddle-headed brother, perhaps you haven't been able to touch your wife's delicate skin at night before. Then why don't you touch it properly now?" Whether it was Ao Jing or Shi Jinfeng, after being played by Xiaohua, they couldn't help but feel resentment. They couldn't find Xiaohua, and when facing other weak people, they also had the heart to play with them. This kind of despicable person existed in both the human race and the demon race. Sure enough, the sound of light footsteps came from inside the stone house. "Husband," that snake spirit was greatly alarmed and cried out miserably, You can't." -13. Chapter 3940. However, the footsteps were still so resolute, not shaken by the snake spirit's panic. Feng Wu's expression changed as he watched from nearby. This Feng Wu was naturally Xiaohua's transformation. In fact, it wasn't much of a transformation. Xiaohua only needed to slightly reveal the heavenly phoenix within his body, and that was enough to scare Ao Jing and the other dragons. Feng Wu could stop Ma Jinfeng from killing the snake spirit, but he couldn't stop the man from walking out of the stone house. Moreover, although Ao Jing and Ma Jinfeng were clearly trying to sow discord, the hand that would reveal the truth was on the man. The man had the right to know the truth, and Xiaohua had no right to stop him. The man's figure appeared, and his hand slowly approached the snake spirit's body. The snake spirit's body trembled slightly and slowly moved, trying to dodge. However, the man didn't give up and followed the direction of the snake spirit's movement again. The snake spirit's body trembled violently for a moment before suddenly stopping. She looked at the man's resolute face with a hint of sadness in her eyes, and a look of desperation appeared in her eyes. The snake spirit no longer dodged. She raised her illusory hand slightly and held the man's hand. The man hurriedly touched the snake spirit's arm, and the panic on his face faded slightly. However, the snake spirit immediately pulled his hand, and bit by bit, it moved upwards, towards the place where the scales hadn't transformed. The man's arm trembled slightly, and he was somewhat hesitant, but also somewhat resolute. The distance of less than a foot actually took a full half a cup of tea's time. Not to mention the howling sea breeze, even the crowd of demons and shrimp soldiers and crab generals stopped moving, as if they were waiting for some kind of outcome. The man's hand finally touched the snake spirit's ice-cold scales, and the moment he touched the scales, the coldness struck the man like a bolt of lightning. The man's arm trembled, and his entire body twitched. His face revealed disbelief, and his empty eyes seemed to flash with spirit, as if he had seen many things. However, the man's mouth seemed to say, you, and it was unknown what he wanted to say, and then there was no more. Then, the man collapsed on the ground, white foam coming out of his mouth. In just a few breaths, the breath he breathed out was less than the breath he breathed in. The snake spirit looked coldly at the man's hand, which was now firmly gripping a piece of scale on the snake spirit's body. Even in the face of death, he did not loosen his grip. The man died. His grayish-white eyes stared fixedly at the sky, as if he had died with his eyes wide open. His hand was still stretched out, strangling the snake spirit's scales. The snake spirit raised her hand, and with a crack, she broke off the scale. The man's hand fell to the ground. The snake spirit reached out to cover the man's eyes and said in a low voice, "Su Lang, I thought that after accompanying you for your entire life, I had already become your true love in your heart. You wouldn't care about my demon body anymore. Actually, there are many times when I want to tell you the truth. I want to know if you care that I'm a snake spirit, but I'm afraid of seeing something I don't want to see. I thought that once we reached this place, I would be able to accompany you to the end of the journey and let you have a perfect ending. But the heavens want me to know what you're thinking. Stories are just stories. The more I tell them, the more you listen to them. What I ask and what you answer are not reality. When the illusion had become a thing of the past, when you really faced reality, you actually couldn't believe that you were actually scared to death by your first wife who had accompanied you for decades, and that you were actually scared to death by your first wife who had taken care of you all your life. The ending of this story is really laughable. Su Lang, how can you make me believe in the affection of this world? Demons will always be demons. What's the point of talking about feelings with humans? Ao Jing was also surprised by this unexpected ending, but seeing the snake spirit so sad, he couldn't help but sneer. Maybe it's time to end it. The snake spirit waved her hand and picked up the man's corpse. She looked at Ao Jing indifferently. Although she was still afraid, she still asked, "Can this concubine go now?" Go. Ao Jing waved his hand. Xiao Hua asked strangely, "Where are you taking this human's corpse?" After a human dies, it's important to be buried in peace. This concubine will bury him. The snake spirit looked at Xiao Hua and replied, "Alas, go." Xiao Hua flapped his wings and sighed. This old man should also go. After staying here for a few years, I didn't expect that you two would have such an ending. It's really beyond this old man's expectations. This old man often heard humans say that the world in people's hearts is often the most perfect. Many people don't dare to open their eyes and face reality because the world in front of them is too cruel. There are too many unsatisfactory things. This kid surnamed Su seems to be a pure and kind person from his speech and behavior. He even helped my demon race since he was young. Unfortunately, a pure and kind person is not necessarily a wise and brave person. His eyes are blind, and his heart is even more blind. After he finished speaking, Xiao Hua spread his wings and a whirlwind appeared. Xiao Hua's body turned into a phoenix that was dozens of feet long. As his wings danced, demonic clouds lingered around him. The clouds flickered and his demonic body instantly flew a few miles away, gradually disappearing into the sea breeze. Second prince. Seeing Xiao Hua fly away, Ming Feng whispered, "This Feng Wu is a demon expert. Alas, if not for today's matter, we could have become friends." Ao Jing smiled bitterly. After watching Xiao Hua fly away, the snake spirit also rolled up the demonic clouds and went inland. He whispered, "Since this matter has happened, let's wait for another chance." Yes. Ma Yingfeng nodded. He then looked at the several demon experts in the distance and whispered. This subordinate suddenly thought of something. That human who escaped. Was he the Confucian cultivator who took out the Immortal Palace's token? Should this subordinate and the others search Yuling Bay? Naturally, we have to search. This Confucian cultivator actually dared to ruin my North Sea Dragon Palace's matter. We can't let him go easily. Ao Jing nodded. However, it's hard to say whether this human is from the Immortal Palace or not. After all, the Immortal Palace's people have already revealed their identities. He can't directly attack my North Sea Dragon Palace. But then again, the human race is best at creating a diversion. He revealed his identity and thought that we wouldn't suspect him. Then, he saved Jiang Sheng. He used Jiang Sheng to provoke the dragon palaces of the four seas so that the Immortal Palace could benefit. At this point, Ma Yingfeng continued in a low voice, also, Baxia 47869, who fought with Jiang Sheng, was also rescued by a Confucian cultivator. This Confucian cultivator disguised as a Taoist cultivator must be related to Baxia 47869. Yes, that's possible. Ao Jing nodded. Check Baxia's records and see if you can find any clues. Actually, there are no more than a few possibilities. One is that the remnants of the Heavenly Abode River asked the Confucian cultivator to help. They borrowed Baxia's power to sneak into the arena and save Jiang Sheng. The first possibility was that the Confucian cultivator wanted to save Baxia and Jiang Sheng along the way. Another is that the Confucian cultivator knew these two and saved them at the same time. Yes, yes, your Highness's analysis is very reasonable. Ma Yingfeng smiled. No matter what, this Confucian cultivator disguised himself as a Taoist cultivator and came to my arena with bad intentions. No, no. If that Confucian cultivator wanted to save Jiangshang, he could have just entered the arena. Why did he drag Baxia into it? Also, if he wanted to make a move, he could have done it before Jiangshang's fight. Why wait until Jiangshang and Baxia make their move? Ao Jing suddenly realized something, shock appearing on his face. Could it be that the Confucian cultivator wanted to save Baxia, and Jiangshang was just doing it in passing? Damn it, Ao Jing anxiously said. Ma Jinfeng, you're right. Quickly go and investigate the background of this Baxia 4786-9. Since he's Baxia 4786-9, he's from the Baxia arena. Why would he come to my Yazi arena? Could it be? Ma Yingfeng smiled bitterly at Ao Jing's words. He naturally knew about Xin Kong's arrangements, but how could he dare to tell Ao Jing? Then, what about the Immortal Palace? Ma Yingfeng asked in a low voice. Investigate? Of course we have to investigate. Ao Jing sneered. I can't find the Confucian cultivator or the Taoist cultivator, but I can still find the human in Yuling Bay. Let's see if I can't turn Yuling Bay upside down. Unfortunately, no matter how powerful Ao Jing was, even if he turned Yuling Bay upside down, it would be impossible for him to find traces of Xiao Hua, because Xiao Hua turned into a phoenix and flew away right in front of him. This was something that Ao Jing had never dreamed of. A heavenly phoenix with a monstrous aura, whose bloodline was even purer than his, the second prince of the North Sea Dragon Palace, was actually the human Confucian cultivator he was looking for. Xiao Hua's heavenly phoenix demonic body spread its wings and soared along with the sea breeze. Looking at the vast sky and the boundless North Sea, a rare kind of comfort involuntarily emerged from the bottom of its heart. Xiao Hua opened its mouth and let out a phoenix cry. This sound resounded through the sky. Not only did it shatter the clouds, it even stirred up the seawater in the vicinity of several dozen li layer upon layer of waves, with Xiao Hua as the center, spread out in all directions. It looked like a medium-sized storm had already begun to form. Awesome! Awesome! Xiao Hua enjoyed the flight and couldn't help but think to himself. No wonder the ancient said, Great Peng rises with the wind one day, soaring up 90,000 li. This poem is refreshing to read, but when I really fly, the feeling is even more inconceivable. Freedom is just like this, to swim freely in the universe, to soar between heaven and earth, to be unrestrained, to do as one pleases. This kind of freedom should be the end of my cultivation. In the future, not to mention the carefree domain, even the void-shattering realm will be as relaxed and free as this. After flying for less than half an hour, in addition to the boundless sea of clouds, there was only the boundless blue sea. Xiao Hua knew that he couldn't fly deeper into the North Sea. He released his soul consciousness and looked around. After confirming that there were no demons following him, and there was no demon expert's consciousness, he returned to his original appearance. Then he took out the Pegasus and flying carriage. Relying on his terrible sense of direction, he urged the flying carriage to fly to another place in the hidden immortal continent. -13. Chapter 39:41. Xiao Hua urged the Pegasus to sit inside the flying carriage. He secretly pondered over his actions along the way and felt that there was nothing inappropriate. Only then did his mind enter the space to check and sort out the gains of this auction. After nearly an hour, Xiao Hua felt that it was about time and released his soul consciousness. Sure enough, at the edge of his soul consciousness, he saw the appearance of land. Moreover, there was no bay or human figure on this land. It was not Yuling Bay at all. This naturally didn't exceed Xiao Hua's expectations. He calmly put away the flying chariot and Pegasus, then used the water escape technique to reach the shore. He raised his hand and took the mountain river seal in his hand, then released Jiangshang from the space. Jiangshang had been standing in the space like a wooden chicken. Suddenly, he felt his body tighten and could move again. He hastily waved the sky piercer and guarded left and right. When he saw Xiaohua, he could not help but be stunned. The sky piercer pointed at Xiaohua and stood there in a daze. Jiang Sheng. Xiaohua did not dare to waste time and said in the demon language, "This Xiao rescued you from the Yazi arena. That North Sea Dragon Palace's second prince, Ao Jing, has been chasing after you. I'm afraid you have the North Sea Dragon Palace's warrior slave seal on your body. This Xiao wants to help you get rid of it first. Don't resist." Okay. Jiang Sheng was not a fool. He did not ask why Xiaohua knew the demon language, nor did he ask why Xiaohua's cultivation was so high at this time. He only gave a simple reply. Xiaohua patted his forehead and used the illusion breaker eye. Those silver-white eyes looked around Jiang Sheng's body. Jiang Sheng felt a chill coming from his body. It was as if those expressionless eyes saw through his body from the inside out. Don't move, don't resist. Just as Jiang Sheng could not help but tremble slightly, several layers of dark green brilliance gushed out from between Xiaohua's eyebrows again. The soul strands that were hard to see with the naked eye split into several strands and entered Jiang Sheng's body. When the soul strands touched Jiang Sheng's body, the body naturally resisted. Jiang Sheng hurriedly dispersed the defense of the body. Those soul strands instantly penetrated Jiang Sheng's blood vessels. Huh. In just a moment, Xiaohua frowns and says in surprise, "The North Sea Dragon Palace's slave warrior seal is really something. No wonder." No, this isn't the slave warrior seal. However, several strange waves flashed with a faint brilliance as they strangely wandered within Jiang Sheng's blood vessels. Although Xiaohua's delusion breaker eyes could see them, his soul strands could not capture these waves. It was not as simple as when Xiaohua saw Xian Kong use the dragon stratagem to extract the warrior slave seal from Yuanya's body. At this point, how could Xiaohua not know that the North Sea Dragon Palace's imprint in Jiang Sheng's body was far from something the warrior slave imprint could compare to? Wang. When Xiaohua frowned slightly, the soul strands have already retracted. Another layer of green light appeared between his eyebrows. It was Xiaohua's washing heaven and earth technique. As soon as the green light appeared, it immediately turned into a green seal text. This green seal text fell into Jiang Sheng's body, causing a burst of rather simple sound. This sound, in Jiang Sheng's ears, seemed to be born from his body. Jiang Sheng only felt his blood vessels rapidly surging, as if there were thousands of small hands in his blood vessels grabbing him at the same time. In just a moment, Jiang Sheng suddenly felt his body become light. Xiaohua's voice sounded in his ears again. "Jiang Sheng, this Xiao removing the North Sea Dragon Palace's imprint has attracted Ao Jing's attention. Don't move, this Xiao will take you and fly away." When Jiang Sheng heard this, he was a little unhappy, but before he could react, Xiaohua stretched out his hand and grabbed his neck. A wisp of fire flashed, and Xiaohua's figure disappeared with Jing Sheng. Poor Jiang Sheng was born with divine strength, but he had gone through several battles and almost died in the arena. How could he resist Xiaohua's tiger and wolf hands now? He was held in Xiaohua's hand like a little chick. In the time it took to eat a meal, clouds of fire appeared in the sky. A fire dragon roared and flew out of the fire clouds. The huge dragon head hung down from the sky with a ferocious look. Its eyes, which were comparable to flying swords, swept across the place where Xiaohua and Jiang Sheng had just stood. Then, the fire dragon roared and sniffed around a few times. Hurricanes swept across the ground, lifting pieces of gravel. This fire dragon was naturally Ao Jing. Xiaohua removing the imprint in Jiang Sheng's blood vessels immediately aroused Ao Jing's vigilance. Ao Jing didn't have time to inform Xian Kong and the other dragon generals. He first transformed into a dragon and chased over. However, he was still too late. Except for a trace of the North Sea Dragon Palace's imprint, there was nothing left here. How is this possible? Who dares to remove the demon imprisoning knot of my North Sea Dragon Palace on the side of the North Sea? Ao Jing was furious. He opened his mouth and spat out a raging fire, burning an area of several miles. This Confucian cultivator, other than someone from the Immortal Palace, how could he have such a powerful method? A Taoist cultivator? A Confucian cultivator? Tui. It's just a smokescreen from the Immortal Palace. They want to trick me. Damn it. I'll definitely report this to my father. How dare they destroy the North Sea Dragon palaces, plan to lure the enemy. Ao Jing cursed angrily for a moment. He was already furious and had lost all sense of reason. The decision he had made calmly earlier was now nothing but bullshit in his eyes. He flew up and was about to return when Xian Kong hurriedly chased after him with some shrimp soldiers and crab generals. Humph. Ao Jing snorted coldly. He ignored Xian Kong and swayed his dragon tail as he flew towards Yuling Bay. On the other hand, Xian Kong stopped in midair. He glanced at the flames on the ground that hadn't been extinguished and the ground that had been charred yellow, and then he sighed and waved his hand. Everyone, return to Feather Spirit Bay. However, before he could fly 100 feet, he hurriedly stopped and looked into the distance respectfully. After a moment, a ferocious smile appeared on his face. He ordered, "Pass down the second prince's order. Track down the people from the immortal palace with all our strength. If you find any trace of them, report it immediately." Yes. The shrimp soldiers and crab generals all scattered and went in different directions. Xian Kong set up a demon cloud and followed Ao Jing back to Yuling Bay. Ao Jing thought that the Confucian cultivator in his eyes had already left Yuling Bay with Jiang Sheng. However, he didn't know that he had already been lured away by Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua only flew for a moment before he asked Jiang Sheng for the direction of Yuling Bay. He turned and flew towards Yuling Bay. Just as Ao Jing was getting angry, Xiao Hua had already flown to the left side of Yuling Bay. Xiao Hua's figure landed between some mountain peaks. He put down Jiang Sheng and narrowed his eyes as he looked in the direction of Yuling Bay. Previously, Xiao Hua had left in a hurry and didn't have time to put the green-robed Xiao Hua into the space. At this moment, the green-robed Xiao Hua had already sensed Xiao Hua's arrival. He had urged the formless Yuanying to return. Xiao Hua turned to Jiang Sheng and said, "Jiang Sheng, you must have recognized me. I'm the Taoist cultivator who fought against you when you flooded Longevity Town that year. In order to find Dragon Lady Jiang Hong in Longevity Town, you didn't hesitate to use the water of Liao River and treat the people of the human race as weeds. I shouldn't have saved you, but because you were eager to save your master, and because I have some fate with Jiang Hong, the people of Longevity Town didn't lose too many lives because of you. I saved you from the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace. Your Heavenly Abode River scheme is too big, so I don't dare to get involved easily. You know what happened today, and you don't need to worry about my kindness. You can go by yourself. Let's not meet again." As he spoke, the green-robed Xiao Hua had already flown over. Xiao Hua withdrew his yuanying, and the green-robed Xiao Hua entered his body. Xiao Hua instantly had a clear understanding of the situation after he left. Thus, he said to Jiang Sheng, "Oh right, I heard that the North Sea Dragon Palace has already sent out shrimp soldiers and crab generals to search for you and me. I won't be returning to Yuling Bay anymore. You don't have to go either." After he finished speaking, Xiao Hua urged his magic power and was about to flee into the distance. However, before his figure could disappear, Jiang Sheng's words made him stand there in a daze. "Jiang Hong fell into the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace with me," Jiang Sheng said, his words like gold. "What?" Xiao Hua turned his head and asked in disbelief, "Jiang Hong is your family's dragon princess. She? How did she fall into the hands of the North Sea Dragon Palace with you? You? How did you protect your princess?" Jiang Sheng wasn't surprised by Xiao Hua's reproach. He even blushed a little as he explained in a low voice, "I escorted my family's princess to Yuling Bay to meet with Zhang Che and the others." Unfortunately, before he could finish, Xiao Hua waved his hand coldly. "Forget it. The matter of your Heavenly Abode River has nothing to do with me. Who captured Jiang Hong? I won't." Just like how he interrupted Jiang Sheng's words, Xiao Hua was unable to continue speaking at this point. Louis saw Jiang Hong as his own sister. He would rather suffer than let Jiang Hong get hurt. Lu Yi was his favorite disciple. If Jiang Hong was captured by the North Sea Dragon Palace, her ending was needless to say. If she wasn't a princess, she would have been sent to the arena to die like Jiang Sheng. If he didn't rescue Jiang Hong, how would he face Louis in the future? Seeing that Xiao Hua didn't speak, Jiang Sheng said, "Zhang Che and the others are in Yuling Bay. If you don't want to do it directly, please send me to Flowing Lightning Residence." Xiao Hua looked at Jiang Shang from head to toe. At this moment, Jiang Shang's physical injuries were still very serious. It was impossible for Jiang Shang to safely find Jiang Che by himself. Even if he didn't want to save Jiang Hong, he should send Jiang Shang to Flowing Lightning Residence. Moreover, how could he not try to save Jiang Hong? Forget it. Xiao Hua smiled bitterly. For my disciples' happiness, I can only be a good person again. Xiao Hua said this in human language. He didn't want Jiang Shang to hear it, so Jiang Shang didn't understand. But looking at Xiao Hua's expression, Jiang Shang knew Xiao Hua's choice. Then, Xiao Hua took out the mountain and river seal and said, Ao Jing should be back soon. Come in. When I find Flowing Lightning Residence, I'll let you out. Thank you, fellow immortal Xiao, Jiang Shang said with a smile. He wasn't surprised by Xiao Hua's help. -13.